Every night this man prays to all the gods in the world that when he wakes up tomorrow, he will live in a fantasy world. Then one day his prayer was answered, but in a way completely different from what he had wished for. He woke up and became a man-die, overwhelmed by being reincarnated into a fantasy world. He began his journey to explore the magical land he had dreamed of for so long, learning new languages and the knowledge of the natives to fit in, but with such a terrifying appearance and nearly overwhelming strength. He was constantly mistaken for a monster, but perhaps he himself was not yet aware of it. He still thought he had done something good and would be loved by everyone. True to the saying, rough on the outside but good-hearted inside. Let's get straight to the main story. At the center of the world, in the vast white desert, there exists a monster, a white serpent that devours entire glaciers, a gray bear that shakes the planet, a disgusting rat polluting the ocean. But an emperor who once survived and returned from the white desert said the most dangerous thing there was the monsters. At this moment, continuous tremors erupt in the white desert. A girl in vacuum defeated the monster in the blizzard. Not far away, a terrifying explosion happened. The muscular hand of a man tightly gripped the monster's claw. He shouted fiercely, a piercing shout as if to assert his own strength. Just then, someone was slowly approaching. The monster trembled in fear as soon as it saw him. He firmly held a sharp weapon in his hand. With swift and decisive slashes, he struck out. The monster got a free one-way ticket to the altar. Afterwards, this person stopped and stood with the two from earlier. Only the man tribe would dare to boast about their own stupidity like that. He walked over to the confused girl and asked, "How much longer do I have to stick around with these rude fools?" She looked at him wide-eyed like a 3-year-old. "What is foolish? Can you eat it?" Hearing that, he sighed helplessly and walked away. And so the bald young man and the naive girl sat back and leisurely enjoyed the monster meat. Just then, Kento came storming over like a demon. "I told you not to eat that stuff because it will kill you." A new vicious aura rose from him. "It's been less than a week and you've eaten it all." The girl sat there embarrassed, speechless. Then these two performed an utterly fake act together. "That was a very noble challenge, and you say that's something to be proud of." Before he finished speaking, Greta's pupils constricted. Her face turned pale as if just constipated. She trembled in pain and foam bubbled from her mouth. Then Greta collapsed amid the girl's panic. "Greta, what's wrong?" "Stay awake." On the other side, Kento just exhaled, "I told you, but you didn't listen." Without another word, he turned and left, leaving the girl to keep pressing and pumping Greta's face. "Wake up, Greta! Come on, get up!" Kento still had his back turned. Standing in the blizzard, he softly said, "This is not what I wanted." The main character begins his reflections in a world full of magic and wonder. In a magical and mystical world, I quit my job and set off on an adventure. I climbed the highest mountain on Earth. I even set foot at the very center of the planet. I went as far as the southernmost point of the globe. But of course nothing happened. Reality was far from what I imagined. Every night I prayed that when I woke up, I'd be in the middle of a dream. And one day that prayer came true. Scene shifts to a nearby location. A horse carriage and a group of people are moving through falling snow. Damn, it's bone-chilling cold. A man with blonde hair looks at the person beside him. "Then wrap yourself up tight unless you want to freeze to death." The young man shields his face with his hand and replies with difficulty, I'm already wrapped up, sir." Next to him, another person hurriedly spoke up. "Team leader, no matter how big the reward is, this is still a foolish idea crossing the white desert. Sir, have you arrived?" But the only response was the team leader's firm, silent expression as he walked on. Haven't they all already agreed? He avoided eye contact, looking away, but we had no idea it would be like this. Inside the carriage, the old steward heard this and grumbled irritably, "Damn, it's freezing." He raised his hand and coughed softly. Then the steward cautiously looked at the young lady before him. "Are you all right?" The girl with green hair smiled brightly like a flower. "Yes, her name is Melena from the Akaza family." She cheerfully replied to the steward, "I'm fine." Outside, there were still sighs. "Damn, I'm going to freeze to death here." Unable to hold back, the steward showed anger and glared outside loudly. "That's really rude." Still, Melena was very sympathetic. "Don't be too harsh. They're the only ones brave enough to escort us across the white desert." Her expression showed a hint of worry. "Even so, shouldn't we let them inside? They look like they're about to freeze to death." Outside, the blizzard grew stronger. Everyone painfully shielded their faces with their hands. Suddenly, the steward nervously looked at her. "No, you know what lives in the white desert." Hearing that, Melena lowered her head. Monsters right. Long ago, an emperor with ambitions to rule the world set his sights on conquering the White Desert. He led countless warriors and soldiers, and he himself entered the White Desert. Many years later, when the empire had collapsed and faded into oblivion, that emperor returned. He lost all his soldiers and came back alone, broken and mad. He looked 10 years older and spoke like a madman. He said that there were monsters in the White Desert. But the most dangerous thing wasn't the monsters, it was the man tribe. They were there. A familiar silhouette appeared, probably Kento. The old steward kept guessing, it's probably just a legend. Melena immediately disagreed. But the emperor's words weren't baseless. Many of the monsters he described were later confirmed to be real. The steward smiled reassuringly at her, but no one has ever seen a man tribe member. Eventually she accepted that. It's true. Countless stories were passed down, yet none mentioned the man tribe. Outside the carriage, suddenly the team leader shouted loudly, "Everyone stop!" He clenched his teeth and looked ahead. There's something up ahead. What is it? The team leader squinted, trying to see clearly what was coming. Finally, because the snow was too thick, he exclaimed, "I can't see clearly." A second later, his expression turned horrified. "I have good news and bad news, everyone." The team immediately urged, "Spit it out." The team leader froze in place. "Damn it. The good news is it's quite small. The bad news is the silhouette of Kento is gradually becoming clear through the falling snow. He's coming toward us." Hearing that everyone shared the same expression, the old steward's eyes widened as he looked out. Following those words, the team leader immediately raised his guard. He gripped the sword hilt at his side tightly, his face full of fear and caution. The figure gradually became clearer. A man with gray-white hair appeared along with six-pack abs and large scars. Kento strode confidently toward the group. His eyes flashed with a purple light. A team member raised the axe in his hand. He immediately recognized a man tribe member. Kento's gaze was still sharp like a blade. He slowly glanced over everyone here. Then, he took the initiative to speak first. "I went out for a walk because I got tired of looking at those other man tribe members, and yet here I run into outsiders in the snow. What luck!" His mouth involuntarily curved into a sly smile. At this moment, Kento wore an extremely excited expression. "I didn't expect to meet someone here. It's a pleasure to meet you." Then he glanced at the carriage. "Are you merchants?" They immediately confirmed yes. Kento continued to ask, "And you guys are mercenaries hired to escort, right?" The team leader honestly admitted, "That's right." Suddenly, Kento rubbed his chin and said, "I advise you all to turn back, although I guessed you would come here." The team leader's face showed a bit of fear. Suddenly, Kento realized something. "Is there someone inside the carriage?" Inside, Melena immediately flinched. The team leader of the group started trembling uncontrollably, waiting for his next words. Yet Kento smiled and said something no one expected. "I want to be hired as well." The whole group immediately became alert to him. "What?" But Kento was still very confident, hands on hips. "Did I not make myself clear? I am offering to help you cross this desert." Hearing this, the team leader silently thought a legendary barbarian asking to join. Could that really be all he wanted? Then he cautiously replied, "So you have no hostile intentions?" Kento coldly crossed his arms. "If I did, you all would be dead already." As soon as he said it, everyone's eyes went wide as if suddenly awakened. The stylish young man suddenly turned his head to look at the team leader. Only then did he slowly raise his hand. "Did you hear that?" Melena inside remained silent, not responding. Then she immediately turned her face outside. Having a steward, it was puzzling to wonder what the heck was going on. The team leader continued to report to her. "He said he wants to be hired as a mercenary." "What will she do?" Once again, Melena fell into deep thought. Then she raised a question. "What if we fight him?" The team leader looked hesitant, seeing the fierce aura radiating from Kento, and replied, "Personally, I do not recommend that." Hearing this, she bowed her head, momentarily at a loss for words. Soon after, Melena looked out the window and ordered them, "Understood. Tell him we accept." Receiving the order, the team leader nodded in agreement. "All right then, his feet." Then he took a small step forward. Thus Kento's request was approved. She agreed. Hearing this, he immediately broke into a satisfied smile. Although he looked very happy, his appearance was terrifying. Good news. The two people immediately went weak in the knees. Kento stepped closer to the team leader. He said confusedly, "What? Then Kento smirked to reassure him, "Calm down. You're just a hired person. I need to meet the one responsible directly." Immediately, the team leader's eyes flashed a warning, "If you dare to pull any tricks." Before he finished, Kento interrupted, "You'll regret it." And so the team leader let him walk toward the carriage. Seeing this, the stylish young man looked at the team leader in bewilderment. Is it really okay to let him meet her? The hirers have allowed it. The boy beside him was also cautious. Even so, we are mercenaries. Somehow we should stop him. The team leader replied, "Stop him." Kento's menacing figure was still in his sight. "Seriously, don't be foolish." Inside, the steward was extremely alarmed. "Miss, what are you doing?" Melena gently reassured him. "Calm down." Suddenly, a voice startled her. "May I come in?" The steward next to her was even more shocked, dropping his glasses. Then Melena hesitantly agreed, "Yes, come in." Receiving the answer, Kento slightly smiled like a predatory demon. The steward's body shrank stiffly, while Kento's posture was like a territorial lord. Kento closed his eyes, his expression calm and cold, advising, "Please stay calm. I have no intention of harming either of you." His tall body sitting in the carriage with the steward almost crushed him like a cake. The steward's face turned pale as he screamed internally, "Don't come any closer, you monster!" Melena opposite looked a bit dazed, gazing up, overwhelmed by his figure. The legendary barbarian was standing right in front of her. She was a bit shy to speak first. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Lord Kento." He politely replied, "I'm also glad to meet you." Then, turning to admire the snowy scene outside the window, he softly remarked, "It's quite warm in here. Even though we're inside a car in the middle of a vast, snowy field, it's hard to keep this warmth." Melena was a bit surprised, but explained, "Ah, that's thanks to magic." He replied cheerfully, "Oh, it really is magic. How do you know this world here?" A series of disjointed sentences left her confused. Kento looked outside again, speaking as if they both understood how dangerous this place was. Even with mercenaries escorting them, the chance for the two to pass safely was very slim. "Therefore, I will ensure your safety. However, I have one request." His sudden words made Melena and the butler freeze. Looking at him, Melena hesitated. "One request. You want treatment." Kento smirked, his knowledge coming from outside the snowy field. He smiled faintly and continued frankly, "The information you two hold is exactly what I want." Hearing that she was puzzled. Knowledge beyond the frozen snowfield, Kento nodded firmly. "Yes." He even tried to persuade further, "You two lose nothing." Melena pressed her lips, hesitant. Inside, she was worried. From the start, we never had a choice. "There's no other way." Melena had to agree, "I understand." The butler beside her immediately gasped upon seeing this, frozen solid like stone. Kento smiled politely. "Very well, what is your name?" Melena placed her hand on her chest and answered solemnly, "I am Melena." Melena belongs to the Akaza clan. He was intrigued and generously introduced himself, "I am Kento. Pleased to cooperate with you. In my past life, I was someone who longed for a magical world. Right on my desk were open-world game discs and a PlayStation controller. One day I woke up suddenly to find myself turned into a savage in the frozen snowfield. The figure was somewhat unsteady, unbelievable. I looked at my hands. No time to figure out why. The only things that existed here were the cutout letters Z and countless powerful monsters. I led a tribe in the wilderness hunting to survive, gritting my teeth to endure day by day. Don't know how much time passed. After countless years, I kept struggling to escape this dreadful frozen snowfield. But my hand slammed hard on the wall, blocking countless system boards repeatedly displaying mission not completed. You can leave the frozen snowfield when you complete the mission. An invisible force stopped me from leaving this place. Just when I was about to give up, a cavalry figure suddenly appeared in the snowstorm. I didn't understand why someone would voluntarily set foot in this harsh place. Yet occasionally people from the outside world appeared, and I realized Kento looked a bit dazed. The outside world beyond the frozen snowfield is the magical world and magic I've always dreamed of. A clear blue sky and warm eyes. The green grassland stretches endlessly. Villages or towns appear at intervals with beautiful ancient architecture. That was exactly the magical world. From then on, I really took action. Not just simply to survive anymore, I slashed monsters. Mission 295, eliminate lizards within the time limit. I slaughtered monsters and completed assigned missions to escape the frozen snowfield. A finishing blow. Blood splattered everywhere. Mission 295 completed. The next mission will be provided, with the belief that one day I will leave this place. He thought because he couldn't leave this damn snowy field. So the information obtained from those coming from outside is extremely valuable. But Kento recalled that most people he had met so far either panicked, drawing their swords, or were half crazy. He crossed his arms calmly. This time, finally, someone is willing to talk to me. How long has it been since I talked to civilized people? I've only dealt with savages, so being able to talk to civilized people is like a sedative. Suddenly his tone slowed. You two are transporting weapons, right? Melena, startled, replied, Yes, how did you know? He glanced outside and replied that he hears the clanging of metal from the carts. It's hard not to notice. She was a bit flustered, I understand now. Kento asked again. Is there a war going on outside? Melena looked sad and gently said, Ah, yes. The Empire and the Kingdom are fighting. He clarified, I see. So the outside world isn't exactly peaceful either. She immediately countered no. Melena imagined two forces separated by a very small pile of rubble. She explained the Empire is overwhelming in numbers and strength, yet the kingdom still refuses to be defeated. The sword masters and heroes are protecting the borders. Kento was curious. What kind of power do those hero sword masters use? Melena tilted her head slightly and dared to ask, Have you never heard of arcane magic? Kento honestly replied, I've never left this place before. She pondered, Honestly, I don't know the details either. But there is a power called arcane magic in this world. Only a few can sense or use this power like spiritual energy or mana. It's drawn in and concentrated at the Dantian, and they are granted one of 5 power ranks. First is level 3 magic. It's mild. It can be manifested in the palm of the hand. This is only for those who can sense arcane power. Next is level 2 application, using both magic and swordsmanship. From level 2 and above, a person can wield arcane power. Then level 1. They can transform arcane energy into divine aura or magical force. But such individuals are usually mage knights or spirits. Beyond this level, all classifications lose meaning, because these entities are beyond human understanding. But if forced to name it, it's called the transcendence level. These beings can freely control arcane magic. They have the power to shake heaven and earth. Sword masters belong to this group. Lastly, the hero rank. They are monsters far beyond arcane control. They influence the entire world. Each hero is a living legend. Melena thoughtfully explained the fact their power is named and ranked proves their might. Even level 3 is considered a master in a small region. Kento wished I hoped to meet them. She paused, puzzled, huh? Kento didn't answer. He kept looking at the distant sky in the same posture, whispering to himself, I can't remember how long I've been stuck here. I'm just trying to survive in despair. All I know is the snowy wasteland lies between a mystical world I can't escape. He stood on a sharp cliff facing the wind, knowing the snowy wasteland belongs only here. Beyond lies the mystical world. When Kento lowered his face, truly longing to leave, a faint smile appeared on his lips. Kento refuted himself. No, his face was determined, confident he must get out. Time passed quickly, moving silently on the roof of the cart they kept going forward. Melena suddenly asked Kento, You really are Manji, right? Kento calmly replied, You seem to have heard of me from your expression. She admitted it was true, he was a legend. Hearing that made him stunned. Kento was surprised. A legend about me? She was shocked in turn. You don't know. Melena said, I'll tell you everything later. Kento was excited, laughing heartily, recalling and saying, So that's it. That old emperor guy is really an emperor? I thought he was just crazy. She was shocked. Yeah. Kento relaxed. Never mind, that legend is true. It happened a long time ago. Melena stammered, Really? He pondered with curiosity. All right. Looking at the convoy, she was carrying a large amount of weapons. Why do you have to cross this snowy wasteland? She was dazed, her lip is moving. We need a lot of money. Melena replied gloomily, lowering her head. He was surprised at the reason. Melena sadly said, Our family business has lasted generations. We have accumulated quite a fortune, but have been sabotaged by jealous rivals, and now we're drowning in debt. This trip is to save the clan from collapse. Kento stroked his chin thoughtfully. A journey to settle debts, I see. So you plan to sell weapons to the kingdom at war with the Empire? We understand. She was surprised, yes. Why did you so casually explain? She had said earlier that the Empire has overwhelming numbers, which means the Empire isn't short on weapons. If not the Empire, then the kingdom is the buyer. When supply is scarce and demand is high, prices naturally skyrocket. I don't know the value out there, but with that quantity, it's definitely huge. Enough to risk crossing the frozen snow plains. Melena was stunned. Ah, Kento continued. It seems you must face hardships crossing here. Is there really no other way to the kingdom's territory? You border the Empire, right? She looked at him wide-eyed in shock, confirming exactly. Melena's mind darkened, unable to believe it. No way. I heard the legendary Manji was just a brutal, ignorant savage. She hoarsely asked, cautiously, Who are you? I'm panicked. Are you really Manji? Suddenly, a huge shock shook them, making Melena snap to alert and jump back. The wagon wheel wobbled and rolled quickly. The butler stammered in fear, What is that? Then a piercing scream pierced the carriage. He curled up in horror, turning pale. In contrast, Kento calmly glanced outside with a casual tone. We have some uninvited guests. Outside, snow fell lightly. Dust swirled thick, and the monster looked like a living mound of slimy mud. Its eyes flashed a glaring, bloodthirsty red. The mercenaries escorting the convoy were stunned. What is that? Melena was also terrified, her face ashen, unexpectedly saying, A black slim. Kento propped his chin, pondering, Is that what the herb is called? She shivered affirmatively. Yes, exactly. It's recorded in the archives. Curious, he asked, What archives? Melena explained, Many skilled adventurers have tried to cross this land over the years. Only a few lucky ones survived and returned. But the evil ones left notes about the creatures they encountered, and among them the Black Slim appeared most often. Then she seriously asked, Hey, Kento, do you know anything about it? And he cheerfully replied, Of course they're chewy and tasty, quite flavorful. Melena was horrified, sputtering, You actually eat them. Kento sincerely shared, Want to try some? Let me catch a few for you. She shuddered like she had goosebumps, coldly refused. No thanks. Just then, a shocking sound rushed in, Melena startled. Outside, the disgusting Black Slim screamed. The squad leader froze, unable to calm down. She quickly sensed something was wrong, called out in panic, Kento. Kento remained silent, just watching outside without replying. Melena called out dazedly, Kento. He slowly said, I have made a pact with you. Kento closed his eyes calmly and continued, I swear to protect your lives so I won't act unless there is real danger. She was shocked, eyes wide. Huh? What do you mean? His voice was casual. That thing, I can handle it as easily as eating porridge. Kento propped his chin, smiling as he glanced, continuing to play the role of a dedicated spectator. More importantly, I want to personally assess the team's capabilities. The chaotic screams of the Black Slim finally snapped the group back to alertness. The squad leader hurriedly gave orders, Raise the shields! The subordinates immediately obeyed, Yes, sir. Just as the shields were raised, the Black Slim rammed straight into one of them. His legs were pushed back on the snow, struggling to hold on. But soon he was flipped backward and thrown away by it. Another man saw this and quickly leapt up. He swung the staff in his hand, shouting loudly to boost morale. With a loud explosion, he was flung away, crashing into something with a jolt, coughing up blood. An axe slipped from his hand and fell onto the snow. Purple smoke rose lazily from it. A horrified voice questioned, What the hell is this? The Black Slim grew even more frenzied, rearing up and roaring loudly. The squad leader frowned and ordered, The Black Slim can only move in straight lines. Spread out and unite. The mercenaries quickly shouted in response. Got it all right? In a flash of a jump, the blue cloak dashed straight toward the Black Slime. He jumped up and threw the spear behind him, dropping down. Then he fiercely swung a sweeping strike straight across the face of the Black Slime. It angrily opened its mouth and roared wildly. Slime goo splattered everywhere. Then suddenly, bright green sparks began to gather on a person's hand. Absorbing into the spear, that person then powerfully shot forward, cutting through wind and snow. Moments later, he pierced through the large Black Slime before the astonished eyes of his comrades. It howled in pain, its slimy body punctured with a large hole, trying to reconnect and pull back. At this moment, the team leader of the group of 5 mercenaries channels mystical energy into his sword and charges fiercely. At the same time, he commands, Don't stop, keep pushing forward. He slashes a deep, beautiful blue arc through the air with his sword. He quickly says tensely that normal attacks are useless. Aim for the core slime. It's hidden inside the body. Time passed with dozens of slashes and stabs almost forming a continuous chain. Finally, the team leader raised his sword high and then thrust it down strongly. Mystical power was unleashed, radiating from the red slime core, cracking it. A faint, prolonged cry. The slime quickly melted and disappeared, leaving behind shattered fragments of the red core on the white snow. They caught their breath, then immediately grew excited and jubilant. We did it! Melena was happy too. They were genuinely happy to have defeated it. Kento quietly watched. Time passed as they continued on their journey. They encountered a giant snow wolf. Wait, there's another monster. Aim for its neck. People slashed, stabbed, and blocked. Every position was covered. Finally, through the hot-blooded efforts of the group, the monster's vital signs were cut off. A heavy silence fell. They surrounded it, still shaken and in shock. So this is the ice snow wolf. Not very impressive team leader. Maybe the rumors were exaggerated. He angrily turned and sternly warned them not to let their guard down. We're not even halfway through yet. Then the young man looked ahead with a dissatisfied glance. His attitude was clear as he said, "But is that Manji really as strong as the rumors say? I mean, isn't he just a legendary figure?" They whispered while looking at Kento, assessing him. He was considered the ruler of the food chain in the ice-snow plains. Yet he's following us to be protected. Shouldn't we test his strength? The team leader frowned when he heard this, slightly shaken, but then resolute. They stepped forward. Melena noticed their doubt, silently watching. Theo stood outside in the snowy wind. The young man who led this matter spoke up. "Miss, I have something to discuss with you." Curious, she asked what confirmation. The young man replied firmly, "We have risked our lives to carry out this mission. As mercenaries, we signed a contract with you. That's our job." Melena stood outside facing them, sincerely saying, "Yes, and I truly appreciate you accepting this request. I always value your help." She thought to herself an escort mission through the ice-snow plains. Everyone else fled when they heard the mission details. "Without you guys, we probably couldn't have even started the journey." The young man suddenly said, "However, there is one thing that worries us." Melena was startled. He seriously asked, "That Manji hasn't fought before, right?" She hesitated, but before she could finish, the young man solemnly expressed, "Therefore, we want to verify if that Manji deserves the special treatment he's receiving." Melena heard this and hesitated. She avoided their gaze and quietly asked, "How do you plan to check?" She awkwardly looked toward the team leader. The team leader was also helpless and somewhat troubled as he replied, "I tried to stop them, but they wouldn't listen to me." Kento understood clearly. He smiled silently and said, "So you want to test my strength, huh? All right, then feel free to step down and continue speaking. But now is not the time." They looked confused. Kento coldly looked up and replied, "There are uninvited guests ahead." Those people looked even more confused. "What nonsense are you babbling about?" Suddenly, a deep voice rang out behind the mercenary group. It was dark and filled with a wild, murderous intent. Weak mortals from outside the continent have arrived long ago. I haven't enjoyed a soul feast in a while. The group was visibly terrified and quickly turned around. In front of them was a huge serpent opening its mouth to reveal long, sharp teeth. It already sensed something and spoke hoarsely to the group. "Bring your lives here, miserable mortals." The white serpent sneered, "Loudly struggle as you wish. It only makes my meal more flavorful." Melena screamed and covered her ears. The young man beside her did the same. Suddenly, a voice called out, "Stop right there!" Kento's face turned serious and sternly said, "You two are my clients. Please step back." Hearing this, the white serpent appeared right in front of him. "Sir, why do you appear here? Have you forgotten the rules of the snow-ice plain when someone leaves their tribe's territory?" Kento's face showed clear annoyance and irritation. He cut in, "That has nothing to do with you." The white serpent replied mockingly. The fierce battle continued. "That's the white serpent, that savage brute." It began shouting, "How dare you order me around the one promised eternal life?" Kento started to wind up for a punch. "Do you want to taste this?" The punch flew straight at the white serpent. So it immediately fought back in terror. Whirlwinds from the battle appeared, frightening everyone. The young man gritted his teeth, enduring with all his might. The force grew stronger. Melena had to use her hands to restrain the ever more ferocious white serpent lady. "You're the type who only listens after being whipped." She sank down and suddenly hesitated. Kento's sharp gaze rose. "I'll handle this quickly." His strong steps were ready. It won't last long. Kento ran quickly towards the white serpent. His fists began to glow with battle energy, surprising everyone around. Then Kento returned, saying I committed a serious offense. Please be merciful and forgive me. Before many witnesses, Kento replied, it's fine. Trusting strangers is never easy. Outside, the horse caravan moved through the snowy cold, causing the steward to cough. This caught Kento's attention. He met Melena and asked abruptly, then recalled, I have a question. What are you looking at him like that for? He crossed his arms, his face tense as he looked at her attire and demeanor. She didn't seem like an ordinary tribe member. Why did she personally join such a dangerous journey? Hearing this, she quickly replied, I am the eldest daughter of Velika, a concubine of Lord Kasak Akaza. Hearing that, Kento asked a concubine, so you're the child of a lesser wife? She answered yes. Then Melena began to tell her past. She came here for a political marriage but was later abandoned. A pitiful mother with no real power. Kento understood her unfortunate situation. I understand, Melena. Clenching her hands tightly, she continued, my mother and I only hold the family name, but in reality we are nothing. We were treated like servants. She lowered her head out of self-doubt. I didn't plan to say this much. Not long after Melena declared firmly, I voluntarily joined this expedition. Kento crossed his arms, facing Melena. Really? You say that even though this journey is full of risks. She didn't dare look him in the eye, stammering, but someone has to set an example. Kento smiled slightly. I see you're quite sharp, Melena. Surprised. Lost your confidence again. She silently listened as he spoke, and she also had big ambitions. She's truly ambitious. She sweated nervously. Both Kento and Melena looked out the window. Here they come, the mercenary squad leader arrived. Surprised by the beautiful scene here, the steward bowed politely and thanked. Thank you very much, Kento. Kento asked Han Melena how she planned to return. She replied, we will go through the Empire. Then he sarcastically said, since she sold the weapons and no longer had contraband crossing the border, wouldn't be too difficult. Kento stared at her. Suddenly, Melena added, you say I'm sharp and ambitious. What does that mean? The butler and Melena glanced at him as if to say she is intelligent and very ambitious. Kento raised both hands forward, analyzing your family was once highly respected, but now is in crisis because of bankruptcy. Even though you are the daughter of a concubine, if you personally open the way to save the family on the brink of collapse. She stood silently for a long while, a pitiful look appearing on her face. Then who do you think your subordinates will trust and follow? Your goal is to hold real power in the clan, right? Kento lowered his voice and softly said, am I wrong? Hearing that, she immediately thought of a perfect response. Her answer reflected her growing thoughts. A precise reply. Yes. It's typical for a concubine's child to face dangerous trials to inherit the family. Melena focused on him, thinking this savage is truly sharp, unlike arrogant brutes, and the power that defeated the white snake without hesitation. If this force belonged to our side, then she said loudly, Kento, if you plan to leave Snow Ice Plain. Kento froze when she asked, why not come with me? Kento politely replied, at this moment, I refuse. I still have things to complete. Melena lowered her head and lightly smiled. I understand. She clenched her fist. Then immediately she handed over a necklace. Will you accept this? Melena smiled brightly. If you ever go out and come to the Akasa family, show them this piece. It won't disappoint you. He replied with a bright smile, if this is a gift, I gladly accept it. The accompanying butler expressed sincere respect and thanks to Kento, while looking at the necklace with regret. One day I hope we meet again. She quickly responded, definitely. Kento watched the carriage leave, his heart heavy with sorrow. A long time passed, 5 years later at Snow Ice Plain. Finally, all conditions were met. The system board appeared, completing mission 784, and the reward was given. Conditions met, you may leave Snow Ice Plain. Kento stepped forward bravely, finally taking his first step. A bright smile revealed into the fantasy world he had always longed for. Kento closed his eyes, enjoying the scent of fresh grass, the smell of wildlife, the scent of the river. All of these things didn't exist even a little in the snowy region. Kento smiled gently, his face full of enjoyment. Very good, truly wonderful. Opening his eyes, he looked around proudly. Before standing in the snow, he shouted, damn white snow, land, hope I never see you again. But here the scenery was fresh and pleasant. This is the magical world, lush and green with gentle sunshine. The world I once dreamed of, a place I thought I could never reach. A world full of wonders and the unknown. Even though I started in the worst way, I survived. He thought, if that's the case, I'll enjoy this world, magic and swordsmanship, dragons and elven clans, everything a fantasy world can offer. He stood still on the lush green grass. Without that desire, I probably would have died long ago. The snowy region is hell where mere will to survive isn't enough to live. Gazing into the distance, he found it strange he suddenly thought there was a place ahead. I can sense a lot of life energy there. Could it be that I finally get to see a real settlement in this world? Kento recalled a man and a little girl covered by snow. Back in the snowy region, I tried explaining to some stupid manji guys about the importance of having a proper shelter, but they only knew how to dig holes to sleep in the snow and stared at me as if I was speaking alien language. I really missed the sturdy, well-organized human villages. He closed his eyes again. What should I say when I introduce myself? Should I greet politely or in a classic way? What world is this? Kento looked at the mountains, then the lush green trees. No matter what, we must approach politely. The ancient trees here are carefully tended and very vibrant. Then an elder of the elf tribe pointed forward and declared firmly, from now on, the elf village will be our new home. Hearing this, the villagers, young and old, were overjoyed, their faces bright and cheerful. Standing above, he shouted loudly, "Quickly, help unload the luggage." The people below were very excited, shouting and cheering continuously. Suddenly, a young blond man approached him and said, Elder of the elf tribe. He replied to the young man with a cold and slightly annoyed expression. What is it? The young man stammered and explained, Are you sure this place is truly safe? He closed his eyes, looking tired, safe. The other villagers busily packed up with happy and joyful moods. Then he explained this is a very remote wilderness. Humans cannot come here. The elder hesitated. Yes, I know that, but isn't the snowy region right next door? The elf tribe elder glanced at him, making the young man more tense. You're worried that monsters from the snowy region might sneak in. Right. The young man scratched his head and replied hesitantly, It is indeed close, too close. He looked serious. No problem at all, nothing has emerged from the snowy region for thousands of years. Moreover, to be sure, I built barriers. The beautiful scenery is concealed by a protective spell that hides our presence, making this place look like an ordinary forest. It took several months to set up. It's an ancient elf technique that we painstakingly reconstructed. As long as this barrier exists, no one can reach us, and even if monsters from the snowy region appear, we will be fine. Then he thought of a beautiful woman because we have a queen. The elf tribe elder quickly regained his confidence and pride. Even the monsters from the snowy region cannot touch our queen. A ranger in the forest suddenly thought something seemed off, like something was torn. Could I have broken something? The slow footsteps, unfamiliar in this place, grew discouraged. How much farther do I really have to go? He was then drawn to a little girl, small and probably lost in the forest. He was surprised by the sight. An elf, a real elf, one of the first races people think of when talking about the magical world. A perfect elf woman appeared in his mind. He smiled excitedly. Didn't expect to meet one so soon. Lucky me, she smiled at me already. I'm glad I survived everything. The little girl was so scared she started crying in the forest. I'm so scared I don't know where I am. What should I do? I must have gone too far. Sitting down to rest, thinking the shade of the trees would cool her, but it didn't. The girl panicked at this figure. Kento, with his large frame and scary face, suddenly smiled at the small girl. Hello? Because he was so huge, like a real monster. She froze for a few seconds, then collapsed. Picturesque scenery and birds flying by. Kento didn't know what to do with this girl, so he just stood there blankly for a moment. The girl collapsed, and he squinted. I haven't even gotten a word out before she fainted. Looks like I should take this child back to the village. Kento walked while thinking of beautiful scenes. According to legend, elves are a peaceful, organized race. If I bring back a fainted child, maybe they'll see me as a good person. I wonder how hospitable the elves are. A smile always on their lips. Honestly, I'm a bit excited. His large hand could gently carry the girl. He was horrified when the villagers saw him and shouted in panic, No way a human is even here. Not my child. Everyone was wary of Kento. Some held sharp objects. Others cried, Who are you? How did you get past the barrier? Kento lost interest. This wasn't going according to plan at all. The mother cried, demanding her child. My child. The elf elder was shocked. Impossible, there shouldn't be any humans here. Why is he here? There should be a barrier. So how can he be here? The villagers around stammered and shouted loudly, The elder has a crack in the barrier. He immediately shook his head. Impossible, where is the queen now? The people were all panicked. His Majesty is currently scouting the surrounding area. Kento raised his hand to explain, but couldn't stop the locals. I am not your enemy. The mother worried about the little girl. If you don't return her, I will chase you to the ends of the earth. He then slumped down. I've been exposed. This barrier was built using ancient secret magic of the elf tribe. An ordinary person could never breach it. If it has been broken, it must have been humans who prepared for it beforehand. He blinked at them thinking, I am the kidnapper. Looking down at the little girl, I have to explain this clearly. The noise had woken the girl, her eyes opened. Kento immediately put the girl down. Hey, go back, return to your people. Stepping down, the girl looked up at Kento's scary face, burst into tears, and quickly ran towards her parents. Could my face really be that scary? He stood frozen for a while. Back in the snowy region, I thought my face was rather normal, facing the people. Anyway, I have returned your child. Elf tribe, as you can see, I am not your enemy. He shouted loudly, ordering, the hostage has been released. Then everyone started shooting arrows. They attacked, firing at Kento before he could explain, not letting him say a word. What the hell? Keto's face suddenly darkened. The elf race is wilder than I thought. According to legend, elves are a gentle, upright race who love nature and seek harmony. Yet in reality, elves are cruel and brutal. Well, elves originally live in the wild. The scene of beasts fighting appeared. And the wild is where the strong survive, far from peaceful. By that logic, their cruelty makes sense. Kento propped his chin with his hand, standing thoughtfully before the arrows flying at him. So this is the reality. Curious, what kind of magical device is he using? He must have limits. Keep attacking. On the contrary, Kento remained calm as long as... Then he prepared his hands to cast magic. Calm down. The magic gradually revealed itself. Hands clasped together, eyes glowing purple. An explosion accompanied by a whirlwind erupted, startling everyone who had to dodge. All the magic he cast countered Kento's magical defense, sending everyone flying high. The battle echoed far and wide. The elf tribe elder's hands trembled, his eyes purple with hesitation at the scene. What the hell is this? Kento's head had a big hole in it. Standing upright, he looked at the people. I am not your enemy. Hands clasped, thinking, damn it, did I underestimate my own strength? Then, mid-sentence, one of the elves launched a rocket over Kento's head that exploded with a loud bang. The elf tribe elder was stunned at the sight. Long hair, blue doll slippers standing high above was none other than Maxaria Haitian Carusia, the Leaf Tribe Queen. She stood holding a weapon, boldly asking the villagers, what happened here? He held a staff in his hand, a human attacker. Suddenly she lowered her face slightly, then gently looked up. Even this place isn't safe from the smoke she left behind. Kento then spoke. Wait. He froze. I want you to listen to me first. He managed to speak so Maxaria was shocked. He was no exception. There's no way he could take a direct hit from the queen and remain intact. Standing above, she remained calm. Are you also a strong enemy who came here to harm us? Her eyes narrowed. Humans really are a despicable species. The bow gradually aimed at him. She is the queen of the Leaf Tribe. The leaves change color with the weather. Then she glanced briefly at Kento. Human, the bow is ready to shoot. You will pay for daring to crave us. Kento had many thoughts running through his mind. Could it be that I'm not even allowed to talk? Clearly we're using the same language. So is she deliberately ignoring me? Or is the relationship between humans and elves really that bad? Instantly, Kento quickly pictured his own tricks. Well, there's no other choice. His gaze shifted. A lesson I learned from Tweet Bangwin. If they won't listen, just keep hitting until they have to. Maxaria's bow appeared. The fierce creature began charging toward him. Kento immediately threw a punch to defend himself. The fist flew forward. Kento's strength was pushing further out. That's why it surprised her so much. Surprisingly, Kento suddenly felt regret for throwing it too hard. That's why Maxaria collapsed to the ground. Kento scratched his face, his eyes changing color. Maybe I should ease up a bit. She widened her eyes in terror. She immediately felt restless and uneasy. Just from a little fight, I realized the opponent is extremely strong, at least at a transcendent level. Why would such a powerful being appear here? Maxaria showed clear signs of extreme exhaustion. Everyone immediately left this place. Everyone was panicked. After a brief hesitation, the princess angrily shouted, "Go now! Everyone run immediately!" The people obediently followed. Everyone ran quickly. Maxaria's anger reached its peak. Humans may acknowledge your power, but you will never achieve your goal. Kento was frustrated because no one let him explain, no, I just want to talk. Why is everything getting so chaotic? Then she muttered some spells under her breath. You bearer of the pure primordial essence, you who burn away the deep darkness of night. Appear now, sharp-horned creature who embraces the purest flame. Her fierce eyes flared up. Magic appeared from her hands. A bull appeared. He should have been scared, but Kento was actually very delighted. Summoned creatures in Tuyet Banguin were all bizarre and deformed. Katheo thought of the animals he usually saw. Some resembled mythical creatures, but they looked too disgusting. He looked at the creature, which to Katheo seemed adorable. Speaking of the creature in front of him now, it was a dairy cow with blazing horns. Katheo's eyes lit up as if he had found treasure. Truly a mystical spirit. Then Maxaria commanded her creature, Fiego, destroy the enemy before you. Suddenly the creature sighed, summoning. Contracts are nothing but trouble, always bringing problems. She snapped, shut up. Looking at Fiego, she thought, the stronger the spirit, the more arrogant and older it is. Normally I can't summon this level, but with another clan's help, I barely managed to make the contract. Didn't expect I'd have to summon it in this situation. Fulfill the contract, Fiego. Maxaria grimaced, showing worry and seriousness. The condition is to kill the human in front of us. Fiego hesitated before the formidable opponent. This one, a fiery bull, was incredibly powerful. Kento looked at the newly appeared creature with sparkling admiration. Amazing, this is truly a summoned spirit beast. This is what a magical world really looks like. Maxaria's voice rang out, making him stiffen. A human has invaded our home. Bigo was a bit displeased. Such a lowly human dares to dream of the race of nature. I have decided. I will burn you until not even dust remains. Kento stood frozen at the current situation. Bigo's eyes flashed as he began channeling mana flow. The energy around him started shifting. His two hind legs braced, his tail whipped. Bigo quickly charged toward Kento with overwhelming force. Kento stared in shock as the fiery bull charged at him. A huge impact exploded. Rocks and dirt flew everywhere. Maxaria stood far away but was still affected by the shockwave of the blast. Quickly shield yourself. She looked toward the battle with eyes full of astonishment. Through the dust, an arm reached out and grabbed Bigo's horn. The smoke and dust gradually cleared. Bigo couldn't believe what was happening before him. Kento smirked. Actually, being a beast is better. He clenched the horn tightly with one hand. The other hand went back, forming a fist. I don't mind smashing it with my bare hands. Kento threw a straight punch right at Bigo's head. A burst of energy flashed, releasing a massive shockwave. The shockwave caused an explosion that tore through the entire forest. The explosion was so huge it shook an entire continent. At the center of the battle, a series of terrifying explosions kept happening. Maxaria also felt the pressure from the aftershocks of the explosion. Kento kept punching the enemy relentlessly. After a while, the battle finally stopped. Maxaria couldn't help but kneel down, breathing a sigh of relief. What? She looked at the ruined scene ahead and the figure standing in the middle of the field. Impossible, Maxaria was speechless. She looked at the man walking toward her, bowed her head in fear. Please. Her words made Kento pause. Spare my people. Kento looked down at the trembling figure kneeling before him. I am not your enemy, elf. Maxaria was shocked by his words. Her eyes suspiciously looked up. What Kento explained everything again as Maxaria listened in disbelief. After a long debate, we finally accepted one thing: he really isn't our enemy. Maxaria bowed her head apologetically. Sorry, humans, we judged too quickly. She thought back to his expression before. Misunderstanding the one who saved her people's child as a kidnapper was truly disrespectful. Kento crossed his arms and gave a helpless smile. It's okay, I understand. You said your people have been chased by humans, right? Even so, it's a bit sad you never tried to hear me out. Maxaria still doubted. You really aren't one of those hunting us, Kento calmly answered her. This is the first time I've met an elf. There are no elves in the White Snow region. Maxaria looked surprised again. What, the White Snow region? Her words caught him off guard too. Manji. Cho the Gray of White Snow. That's the name outsiders gave me. Maxaria continued to look doubtful. No way, we thought no human could survive there. She suddenly became worried. If you can leave the White Snow region, then maybe others can leave too, right? Kento shrugged. Who knows, but I don't think so. Not everyone can leave like that. He thought of the giant snake and the strange quest board. The White Snow region has its own rules. Even strong creatures like the snake can't break them. For some reason, I was granted a way out through what they call a quest. Kento showed a pensive look. I'm probably an extremely rare exception. Maxaria breathed a relieved sigh. Then that's lucky, Kento asked with concern. By the way, is your spirit beast okay? He awkwardly scratched the face of the fiery cow. I already chopped it in half. Maxaria stood up while reassuring him. Kento, don't worry. Spirit beasts are creatures of nature. When defeated, they just return to the spirit realm. Spirit beasts, huh? She looked at him seriously. Sorry for the trouble I caused. If there's anything you want, as long as it's within my ability, I'll fulfill it. Kento was still thinking about what she just said. Spirit beasts. He asked her a question. Then can someone who's not an elf make a contract with a spirit beast? Mazaria looked uncertain. That's almost impossible. I think so. She continued analyzing. Of course, if a human is deeply connected with nature, they might be able to form a contract with a spirit beast. So the chances are still very low. Mazaria fell silent before his sharp words. She made a suggestion. If you really want to contract a spirit beast, try going to Elfo Sagrado. Elfo Sagrado. Mazaria thinks of a lush, vibrant land. It is where the elf gods reside, the most sacred sanctuary of the elf tribe. The elf sanctuary. There you might have a chance. Kento happily points to himself. Can a human like me step in there? Mazaria explains again. Normally no, but with my introduction you can. I will give you the map. Keep it secret. Mazaria thought of that land while summoning a fireball. The elf sanctuary Elfo Sagrado is where every elf scholar dreams of. She thought of those savage warriors. But for elves, humans approaching that place is extremely dangerous. To protect that place more precious than life itself, elves have never revealed its location to outsiders. A red crystal appeared in Mazaria's hand. Still, I want to trust you. She handed it to Kento. Take this. Whoever accepts this crystal, I appreciate you. Mazaria thought of a guardian deity. Of course, even if you reach our gods, they will surely test you. She smiled at him. But for you, I don't think that will be a problem. I wish you good luck. Thank you, Mazaria. He happily introduced himself. I am the queen of this brown leaf tribe in autumn, Mazaria Hasian Carusia. And your name? Kento also smiled. I am Kento, Kento Mandi from the White Snow region. A strong foot stomped, cracking the ground. Kento charged energy to leap forward. He landed, then jumped again. The sound echoed through the treetops. Kento kept jumping continuously through the forest on the northern border of the Han Kingdom of Zhong. A guard panicked. What's that? What's going on? I don't know, something is coming. The captain of the Northern Han Guards also looked tense. He rang the bell to gather all the guards immediately. Explosions kept happening around moving toward the city. Familiar shoes appeared through the dust and smoke clearing. A figure appeared. The guards trembled, unable to contain their fear. Kento smiled warmly. Are you the guards? Nice to meet you. The atmosphere among them became quiet. The guards looked tense, their bodies shaking. Was that loud noise just now caused by this guy? He looked at Kento standing dazed with ash-gray hair. The Northern Han Guard captain couldn't hide his fear, a scar across his chest. No way! He thought of a man standing tall in the snowy Mandicho region. Kento stepped closer to the group. The guards raised their weapons warily. Stop right there, one more step and we'll attack. Kento calmly explained, I'd appreciate it if you stay calm. I am not your enemy. The Northern Han Guard captain questioned, What do you want from us? Kento slowly raised a finger. He said nothing but pointed in a direction. The Northern Han Guard captain was startled and looked that way. He showed surprise. The fortress. Kento answered seriously with a dazed expression. I want to enter your territory. The guards looked confused at him. After a moment, a voice echoed from the room. Wanting to enter the territory means just passing through. Kento rubbed his chin, thinking, if possible, I want to stay for a while. I'm not sure how long. The Northern Han Guard captain questioned, so you intend to stay for some time. What is your name? I am Kento. The Northern Han Guard captain continued questioning, do you have anyone to vouch for you or identification? I have nothing like that. His eyes suddenly changed. He thought of Melena smiling as he handed over, give you an item. Thank you, Kento. If you leave later, please bring this token if you want to find House Akasa. Kento grasped the token in his pocket. He placed the item on the table. How about using this as proof? The leader of the Northern Han Guards was a bit surprised. What is that? Kento sat with his arms crossed, the crest of House Akasa. I received it from someone with the bloodline of that house. The Northern Han Guard leader examined the token. House Akasa is a merchant family from the Kingdom of Daniel, right? The Northern Han Guard leader held the token. The family visited the White Snow region a few years ago. Kento was a bit surprised. You know them. The Northern Han Guard leader did not hide it. Recently, that family has been rising quickly. Since the new head took over a few years ago, they've expanded rapidly. The Northern Han Guard leader looked troubled. Doesn't seem fake, but still hard to verify. So it doesn't belong to this kingdom. This is the kingdom of Jen. The Northern Han Guard leader put the item down. Even without verification, it's still useful. You may enter, but there are conditions. Kento was surprised. Conditions? The Northern Han Guard leader looked at him seriously. Verification is needed. We need to make sure you're not dangerous. Kento's voice carried some suspicion. A whole team. The Northern Han Guard leader explained, currently, 3 others are also requesting entry into the territory. The condition is to clear a dungeon near the territory together. Kento rubbed his chin. Forming a team is the condition. That's easier than I thought. Kento smiled happily. All right, I accept. But there's one more condition. The Northern Han Guard leader looked at him seriously. After clearing the dungeon, I want you to report in detail everything that happened inside. Kento smiled sharply. I understand. Seems like you don't fully know their identities either. You have to observe each other and use this chance to weed out suspects. Not a bad plan. Actually, quite clever. The Northern Han Guard leader looked at him in amazement. Not only that, are you really a Mandai? Kento nodded. Yes, I am Mandi. The Northern Han Guard leader secretly feared, I always thought Mandai were a stupid species. You are the first Mandi to make me reconsider. The Northern Han Guard leader stood up. Enough said. Let's go. A man with a mustache sighed. Even though it's the law, going into a dungeon with pickpockets like rats is annoying. The man claiming to be Paladin Alexandro Tiranu looked displeased. Really troublesome. The thief Kasan Black also looked disgusted. What's your problem? Old man wants to start trouble with me because he lost all his money to a thief. Alexandro angrily said, You brat dare insult a paladin? Kasan showed disdain towards him. Paladin, my foot. Paladins these days wear armor like that. If you really were a paladin, you wouldn't have dragged your face here. You're just a self-proclaimed wandering paladin, right? His words made the man uneasy. You're just a wanderer like me. Alexandro grabbed his sword as Kasan kept taunting, Tiranu, that's my name. Where did you dig that up from? The man angrily drew his sword, bastard. Kasan lightly swung the sailor's blade in his hand. Want to test your strength? Want to test your... Think those torn armor pieces can withstand my strike. Kasan's blade began dripping strange blue liquid. Alexandro also gripped his sword tightly. The metal clashed, emitting brilliant platinum sparks. A voice rang out, I really hope you two will stop. A female priest appeared, sighing as she looked at the 2 men fighting. Christine of Colosia sat in the corner, sighing. Do I really have to clear a dungeon with this bunch? Will this be all right? She tried to analyze the situation. By the way, the dungeon requires at least 4 people. Someone else will come. She looked worried about the current situation. A sound suddenly startled her. The Northern Han Guard leader pushed open the door and entered. The last member has arrived. Kasan looked excited. I hope this time it's a normal person. Watch yourself, a well-shod foot stepped in. Kento entered the room with overwhelming presence. The people in the room looked alarmed when they saw him. Kento smiled, so it's you guys, my teammates. Alexandro silently marveled at how big he was, unable to hide his amazement. Is he really human? Kasan also looked frightened. What kind of pressure is this? Kento excitedly waved and greeted, very happy to meet the North Con Guard team leader. Remind the group, all right. Introduce yourself. I'll be right back. Kento looked at the group and said, Now start introducing yourselves. I am Kento Manji. He looked at Kasan in bewilderment. What about you? I am Kasan Black. I'm a thief. A thief, Alexandro hoarsely interrupted. The 2 of them are paladins. Alexandro Terranos is a paladin. Can you use Holy Six? He looked embarrassed. Normally, yes, but I'm a special case. Actually, I can't use it. Kento looked confused. Hayes also spoke up. I worship the god of lies and deception. I am Hayes, priest of Colosia. You're a priest too nice to meet you. Kento was a bit surprised. Even as a priest, your position is still unclear, or shy. The god I worship is Colosia, god of trickery and illusions. My god doesn't have a very good reputation. I see. The North Con guard team leader pushed the door open and stepped inside while the group was talking. He spoke up. "If everyone's ready, let's go." Kento and Alexandro showed no emotion. Hayes and Kaysen, however, looked a bit uneasy. After a while, the North Con guard team leader spoke to the group. "We've arrived." Kento was a bit surprised by the surroundings. The North Con guard team leader stood before a cave. He introduced to the group that this is the entrance to the dungeon. He explained about the dungeon while the group showed various expressions. The dungeon has 3 levels. We will face immortal monsters. Kento smiled confidently at the North Con guard team leader's words. "Clear the dungeon and bring back the badge." Lord Kento started the conversation. "Now let's get down to planning. Can you explain?" The thief Kassan Black looked scared. Cold sweat started to break out. He stammered, "Yes, Lord Kento." Kento replied kindly, "You don't need to be so formal. We're teammates, right?" The thief shyly scratched his head and forced a smile. He then became serious. Then he seriously laid out the plan for each person. "Kento and the technician will be the vanguard forming the front line. I will handle trap detection. The female priest will stay behind to support with magic during the fight." "What do you think?" Hearing this, Kento's eyes lit up with excitement. "I got it," making Kassan Black smile awkwardly. The 4 of them formed a very strong and enthusiastic team. "Then let's proceed. Cut to nighttime." The 4 looked worried and highly alert. "Still on the way." They were close to the battlefield, but it was very dark. "So scared, oh God, I can't see anything." Kassan Black was sweating nervously and worried inside. There were no guards or traps at all. Everything looked strangely calm. Suddenly, the sharp eyes of thief Kassan spotted something unusual. He stepped up to Kento, glanced sideways, patted his shoulder, and said, "Wait, stop. There's a monster." Kento responded confused, "I don't see anything." But Kassan Black pointed to the skeleton on the ground and said, "Do you see the scattered bones on the ground there? Those are bone soldiers. If we take one more step, they'll come back to life and attack us." Kaysen's sharp and cold eyes thought silently as expected. "That despicable guard team leader already knows everything. This dungeon is not a trial for training, but a trap to eliminate outsiders." From the start. When Kento heard Kassan Black say that, he immediately pondered the core soldier. Kaysen Hawk continued to explain and warn everyone. Bone soldiers are not monsters that are easy to deal with. Even if their bodies are damaged or their limbs severed, they still move as usual. Moreover, with bodies made of bone, their defense is extremely solid. The difficulty of this dungeon far exceeds my expectations. Kaysen Hawk arrogantly began assigning tasks to everyone. "Hey, priestess, get your magic ready. Old man, prepare your shield well. Kento, you also need to be ready. I will focus on finding weaknesses during the fight. Even if their bodies are destroyed, they still move, so aim at the weak spot in the neck. Also, because they are so tough, you have to strike the same spot multiple times to bring them down." Kento praised excellent leader. "Understood," Kento said. Then Kassan Hack advanced toward the bone soldiers on the ground while speaking. Kento widened his eyes watching the bone soldiers. The bone soldiers were standing up preparing to fight. Alexandro had prepared his sturdy shield. Or was he clasping his hands to chant a spell? Kassan Hack was also ready, focusing on this intense battle. The battle began. Kento swung his arm, delivering a punch to the bone soldier, shattering it instantly. The time to defeat the bone soldiers was so fast and easy for Kento that even he and everyone there were stunned. Kento happily said, "Oh, Kassan, you were right. Just smash their heads and they stop moving." Kassan forced a smile, extremely surprised by Kento's skill. However, inside, Kassan thought, "This is not what I meant. Bone soldiers are creatures made from bones, and their bones are as hard as steel, difficult to break. Even an experienced swordsman without using aura could hardly cut through bone in a single strike. Not to mention the bone soldiers are enhanced by the dungeon's magic. The only way to kill them is to focus attacks on the neck. Like chopping down a large tree, you have to break their cervical vertebrae. It's unbelievable that you can blow their heads off and crush them into dust like that." Kassan was sweating, cold sweat rolling down his face. His eyes were extremely tense. He was still deeply pondering about Kento. "From the first time I knew he was strong, but I didn't expect it to be this much. Is he really human?" The 3 people on the team were still stunned by the battle with the bone soldiers, which seemed difficult but was defeated by just one punch from Kento. Kento tiptoed happily, saying, "That's right, let's move forward." Hayes ran quickly and shouted, "Yes." Seeing that Kento was puzzled, no need to rush that much, Kassan nimbly replied, "Yes." Alexandro and Hayes were crying and scared. "I don't want us to die here. After walking a few steps, Kento stopped and began to notice something unusual at his feet. The head of a bone soldier appeared. People behind asked Kento curiously. He was stunned. The scene before him was many sets of bone soldiers scattered on the ground. Hayes shouted in panic, "Bone soldiers, Kasan!" At this moment, Kasan also realized the anomaly. This time it was real. They were charging forward. Suddenly, Kento shouted, "Can I ask you all a favor?" The other three asked back confused, "What?" Kento coldly and arrogantly said, "Let me handle these damn bones myself. I want to check something." Hearing this, Kasan, like a fish in water, hurriedly replied, "Ah, yes, do as you wish." Hayes's face lit up as if he'd found gold. "I agree too." Kento's eyes suddenly shone with a purple light, his mouth forming a mysterious smile. "Thank you very much." The battle was about to start. The bone soldiers holding weapons were slowly standing up. The other three wondered in their hearts what was he going to do. Kento was carefree and quite confident, wondering, how does this structure work? Quite strange. The bone soldiers began to perform techniques. It swung its weapon at Kento, intending to strike, but Kento easily caught the sword with 2 fingers. Now Kento raised 2 fingers in front of him, closed them, and his eyes shone with purple light as he began to perform a technique. "What are you planning to do now?" Around the bone soldier, a strange jade-green light radiated. He raised his sword, ready to fight. A flash of golden light streaked across the log. The battle began. The bone soldier swung his sword at Kento, but Kento easily dodged by tilting his head. He grabbed the bone soldier's hand tightly and smiled triumphantly. Suddenly, the bone soldier's hand dropped straight to the ground along with the sword. Kento stared intently at the light remaining on his own hand. The bone soldier, having lost one hand, looked dazed and confused with a blank, almost silly expression. His eyes flared with a jade-green light showing his resentment. The bone soldier performed a technique to retract the sword back to his hand, getting into a ready stance. Kento laughed, "Haha, so you can switch hands too." The bone soldier angrily charged at Kento. Suddenly, Kento grabbed the bone soldier's other hand and broke it. A strange light appeared beneath the bone soldier's feet. The bone soldier attacked Kento again, even more fiercely. However, Kento easily caught him again. He even laughed mockingly, amused by the fighting style. Kento praised him. "You can even switch positions while fighting. You're really not ordinary, huh?" Turning to Kento's 3 teammates, he saw Hayes trembling with worry, cold sweat pouring down. Kasan and Alexandro witnessed the fight, also panicking and sweating coldly all over their faces. Seeing Kento grab the bone soldier's head, his whole body glowing with intense purple light, Kasan had to say, "This is truly a madman." But Kento smiled and waved his hand. Kasan Black immediately panicked and trembled. In an instant, a skull fell to the ground. Kento stood above, glancing down at the skull with disdain. Kento stepped on the skull coldly and said, "So people can still move with just their head, huh?" The skull shattered. He chuckled softly. "Interesting." After a while, Kento brushed off his hands. He smiled at everyone and said, "Did you all wait long? Sorry to keep you waiting." Hearing this, Kasan Black immediately said loudly, "No! Do whatever you want," Kento said softly. "Thanks." Kento stepped forward. "All right," he smiled. "Let's continue." The 3 Kasan Black, Hayes, and Alexandro immediately responded loudly, "Yes." After walking for a while, Kento stopped briefly. He bowed his head to Kasan Black and said, "These are the stairs appearing before us." Kasan Black said, "Second floor." Kento's group silently stepped down. Alexandro and Hayes looked around cautiously. After a while, Kasan Black took off his face-covering cloth and exhaled deeply. He quietly said, How about we take a little rest?" Kento turned to look at everyone. He stroked his chin thought for a moment, then said, "You make a good point. A short rest is good." Kasan Black immediately knelt, bowed deeply, and said loudly, "Thank you." Kento crossed his arms and closed his eyes to rest. The other 3 also sat down on the ground to rest. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. Kento spoke up. "I have some questions about this dungeon." Kasan looked at him and asked, what Alexandro also opened his eyes to look at him. Kento smiled gently. "Honestly, I don't know much." Hearing that, Kasan panicked, realizing he might have offended him, and stammered, No. The desire to learn is admirable, and I don't know much either." But Kento said, "Thanks, okay." Kasan opened his eyes wide, looking at him. He asked curiously, "What are you wondering about, Kento?" "About the people happily walking on the streets nearby and the dungeon's close proximity to the territory." He stroked his chin thoughtfully and said, "So, Is there really no problem with the dungeon and the monsters? Kaysen looked at him and explained, basically, the monsters in the dungeon can't spill out. Of course, there are exceptions, but those cases have been controlled and dealt with beforehand. Kaysen Black stroked his chin and cleared his throat softly. He recalled scenes from the dungeon and said the dungeon itself is a natural phenomenon. Sometimes it's a cave, sometimes it's towers. Dungeons usually appear near populated areas. Kento seemed to realize something. He softly said, "That's why this dungeon is here." When Kasan looked at him, he said, "When the dungeon appears, the territory will assess the level of danger. Then we outsiders, mercenaries, or guards will take action to handle it." Kento smirked as if he heard something interesting. He smiled and asked, "So does that mean there won't be any dungeons inside the territory?" Kaysen shook his head and said no. Dungeons only appear at a certain distance away from residential areas. Kento nodded. "I see." His face immediately lit up. He happily said, if it's a dungeon, there must be rewards after clearing it, right? He pictured gold and jewels in his head. That's right. At the last level, there will be a boss. If you defeat the boss, you'll receive various kinds of rewards. With a dungeon like this, the rewards definitely won't be bad. Kento smirked slightly. It's just like playing a game. Hearing this, Kasan immediately asked curiously, "What's a game?" Kento replied, "I was just mumbling." He looked at her and said, "I have one more question." Kaysen hesitated and said, "Yes, go ahead." He lowered his voice and asked, "Who created this dungeon?" Upon hearing this, she was stunned. Question marks appeared above her head. She said in surprise, "What dungeons naturally form? No one creates them." She looked at him suspiciously. Kento imagined a hand controlling the people. He voiced his thoughts. "That seems hard to believe. First, they always appear near populated areas as if someone deliberately arranged for us to explore them." The image of a snake tightly coiling an apple appeared in his mind. He thought silently, "They appear near crowds and lure us with attractive rewards." Kento crossed his arms coldly and said, "I see it more as an artificial setup than a natural phenomenon." Hearing that, Kasan was startled and realized it made sense. She rested her chin on her hand, thinking, "I never thought of it from this angle because I always assumed it was normal." And Kasan Hak quietly bowed her head in thought. "Actually, I've never deeply considered that. No, I've never even questioned it because it's a clear principle and undeniable truth. Could this Manji guy really dare to doubt such an obvious truth?" He sweated slightly while pondering. "Man-Dai have always been a foolish and brutal species after all." Kasan Hak recalled the image of Kento in the snowstorm. He was standing on a body in a terrifying manner. He thought silently about the heartless and cold-blooded. That truth had never changed. The image of Kento's bright eyes in the dangerous snow flashed in Kasan Hak's mind as she pondered. If what I know is correct, is this Manji really just an ordinary Manji? Suddenly a voice interrupted Kasan Hak's train of thought. Kento chuckled softly. "This is really interesting." He stood up smiling and asked, "Has everyone finished resting?" The group was startled and stood up answering in unison, "Yes." Kento turned and started walking. He waved his hand slightly and smiled. "Then let's continue." Kasan Hak immediately replied, "Yes." After a while, Kento's group walked on, everyone alertly looking around. Kento calmly moved forward, ignoring the worries of those behind him. Suddenly, he noticed something and stared. A yellow-locked treasure chest appeared before him. Kento curiously said something. Kasan Hak looked at the treasure chest and said, "That's a treasure chest, one of the maze's rewards. If you open it, the treasure will be yours." In Kasan Hak's mind, she imagined those who had opened treasure chests filled with gold. He thought quietly, it's easy to say, but opening this high-level chest requires a skilled thief. At least someone proficient in lockpicking skills. He crossed his arms, closed his eyes, and thought, but if someone is that skilled, why would they risk entering this dungeon? Unfortunately, we probably have to skip this chest. Suddenly a voice interrupted his thoughts. Kento looked at him and said, "Kasan, open it." Kasan was extremely confused, thinking silently, "What's going on?" Kento looked at the treasure and said that was the treasure. He looked at Kasan Black and said, "You're a thief, right? This is your business." Kasan Black immediately turned pale, hesitatingly said, "Oh yes, that's right." But Kento's face lit up with delight, saying, "Isn't treasure hunting a thief's job? That's why I asked you to try. I want to see the talent of a thief in person." Kasan Black frowned, uncomfortable, thinking, "Oh man, that's true, but there's a problem on the surface." Kasan Black smiled but felt helpless inside. Putting both hands on his head, thinking if I could do it, I wouldn't be here. He opened his mouth wide in panic, frozen like stone, thinking a lousy thief not recognized by the guild couldn't possibly have lockpicking skills. He worried and thought, but I can't tell them the truth. When Kason Black looked at Kento, who was staring at him with hopeful eyes, he thought silently that those eyes were full of expectation. If I try and fail, it will instantly turn into disappointment. He imagined Kento's cold, imposing gaze looking at Kason Black and saying, "You call yourself a righteous man, but can't do this. So useless." He recalled the scene of Kento stomping on a skull in full panic. Inside, he screamed in agony, but outwardly scratched his head and smiled, saying, "Ha ha ha, then I'll try." After a while, Kento looked at Kason Black, who was picking the lock, with admiration. He admired and said, "Oh, you're using that tool to pick the lock. Very clever." Kason Black felt immense pressure, worried that he was being stared at from behind. "If I fail, I'll lose my life." He nervously recalled watching a thief pick a lock before and pondered. He remembered the skills he had seen when following him as a porter. While examining the lock, Kason Black felt a huge pressure from behind and thought back. His whole body felt like it was on fire. Sweat poured continuously, and he nervously thought he was betting his life on this. Thief Kason's soul suddenly screamed. Thief Kason's eyes widened in surprise and shock. He started trembling. Seeing this, Kento was very curious. It turned out he used his talent to open the treasure lock. He was so happy and moved to tears, exclaiming, "It's open." Hay, standing aside, saw this and was very pleased and eager, saying, "Oh, really? Heard that only skilled thieves can open this treasure lock. Didn't expect to meet someone who could open it right here. Amazing." Kento was pleasantly surprised and gave a thumbs up, saying, "Wow, well done." Kason heard the praise, but Thief Kason's expression wasn't happy at all. He was dumbfounded, thinking he shouldn't have been able to open it. So why did this happen? Just by looking, he opened it. This skill is too powerful. Kason always took pride in his survival skills, but now for the first time doubted the meaning of his life. He was still very stunned, standing motionless. Had I really done my best? And so Kason lost his pride. Kento then stepped closer to the treasure lock. He looked and asked curiously, "So how much is this treasure worth?" Hay also stepped forward and said, "Well, with this amount, a family could live luxuriously for a whole month." Kason still hadn't shaken off his life doubts. Hearing this, Kento smiled and replied, "I see, got it." Then he looked at Thief Kason and said, "Kason, you handle splitting the reward." Thief Kason was startled by Kento's call. He shouted fearfully, "Yes!" Thief Kason approached the lock and gently lifted a cup. He was stunned by the cup's sparkle and stared at it unconsciously for a while. Suddenly, someone called him with a mysterious voice, "Kason, Kason." Frightened by the call, he screamed loudly. Oh, it was Kento calling him. Kento said, "Do you need any help?" Kason was so scared he was panting heavily. Seeing him like that, Kento asked, "Are you hurt or something?" Thief Kason panicked like he'd been caught red-handed. He shouted, "No, I didn't do anything." All three people there were very puzzled. After a while, the group took all the treasure from the chest and left. While walking, Kento suddenly noticed something ahead stopped and said, "Wait, it's skeleton soldiers." Ahead, a pile of tightly packed bones lay on the ground. Kento's group saw this and stopped. Kento looked at the skulls, counted, and exclaimed, "Looks like there are 4. I'll deal with 3. The 3 behind Thief Kason, Hayes, and Alexandro were startled by this. Kento smiled eerily at the pile of bones in front of him and said, "I'll take care of the rest." The Thief Kason heard that and replied, "Got it," but inwardly thought this was a real fight and it would be tough. Hayes and Alexandro also nodded in agreement. Immediately, Kento quickly stepped forward. Suddenly, the pile of bones on the ground flashed with a blue light. The Thief Kason saw this and broke into a cold sweat, thinking, "No matter how many times I see bones reassembling themselves, it's still creepy." Then the bones, as if possessed, slowly assembled and stood up. The group stepped back in fear. Only Kento bravely stood his ground. Then 4 skeletal soldiers charged at the group. Kento ordered, "Everyone get ready." Immediately, Kason, Hayes, and Alexandro raised their hands and chanted the holy light magic spell. A golden light appeared surrounding the 3 of them. "Keep it up." At this moment, the thief Kason bravely rushed forward. He threw a punch at one of the skeletal soldiers. The other 3 skeletal soldiers angrily tried to rush forward, but suddenly all 3 were grabbed tightly by the neck, leaving them shocked and astonished. Kento, using his muscular arms, easily controlled the 3 skeletal soldiers. Seeing Kason's courage, he exclaimed, "This is rare to see. Don't mess this up, I'll handle you guys. The remaining skeletal soldier fiercely swung his sword at Alexandro. Alexandro quickly raised his shield and blocked the soldier's sword strike. Alexandro's eyes grew more determined than ever. At this moment, Thief Kasan suddenly jumped into the air. He planned to take advantage of this moment to attack the skeletal soldier from behind. Raising his sword high, the skeletal soldier seemed to sense the danger behind him and glanced back, but Kasan was too fast. The soldier couldn't avoid the strike and was cut down by Kasan. Hayes then began to act. Her eyes flared brightly. She then raised her hand and loudly recited the move, Shadow Cloak. Suddenly it seemed Alexandro was infused with new strength. He rushed forward at an incredible speed. Alexandro quickly delivered a surprise slash to the skeletal soldier. The skeletal soldier collapsed to the ground. Its neck bones began to crack, but instead of dying, it screamed angrily. Watching his teammate as Kento smiled happily and said, "Ha ha." He held 2 large stones in his hands. He cheerfully said, "I never expected to witness such a perfect team formation." Kento smiled eerily and said, "Truly rare." Then suddenly he crushed the large stone in his hands into dust. Kento smiled and said, "Now let's finish this trouble. Time to enjoy." After saying that, Kento quickly swung his blade at the remaining skeletal soldiers. After a while, Kasan, Hayes, and Alexandro cornered a skeletal soldier and seemed to share a common thought. The thief Kasan thought, "No doubt about it anymore." Hayes broke into a cold sweat, thinking, "That's savage." Alexandro thought, "He's challenging us." The skeletal soldier's eyes widened, looking at the 3 with a guilty expression. It sat silently in this corner, looking pitiful. All 3, Kasan, Hayes, and Alexandro, glared angrily at the confused skeletal soldier, thinking, "If we show any weakness, we're doomed." Then they unleashed a flurry of slashes on the poor soldier. After a while, the soldier's head finally fell to the ground. Alexandro, exhausted, stuck his sword into the ground and slumped down. Not only Alexandro, but also Kasan and Hayes looked extremely tired. After defeating 1 skeletal soldier, the 3 were very fatigued, but only Kento remained strong. After single-handedly defeating 3 skeletal soldiers, he crossed his arms, reflecting on the past and no longer doubted anything. The people of Snow Ice Plain were also quite good. Kento thought about the 3rd-level monsters, also skeletal soldiers, increasing in number. But with Kento leading, we easily overcame them. Finally, Hayes and Alexandro looked at Kento worriedly as he pondered. Kasan also looked at Kento with concern. At this moment, the group had reached the deepest room in the dungeon center. There sat a skeletal knight. He was sitting motionless on the throne. Surprised, Hay widened her eyes and trembled as she exclaimed, "Why is there something like this here with the skeletal cavalry?" Kento still didn't quite understand, so he asked curiously, "Is it different from the others?" Hayes answered, "Yes, it's extremely strong." Hayes's expression looked very fearful. She pondered, a skeletal cavalry swinging a long sword easily and powerfully. If you're not at a knight's level, there's no chance to face it. This is not a monster we can handle. At this point, Kento continued to wonder, what if we don't defeat it and go back? Hay replied hesitantly, "There will be an investigation by the association. If they find a reasonable excuse, we won't get into trouble." Suddenly hearing this, Kento smiled. Then he confidently stepped forward with a confident smile and said, "Makes sense." The group exclaimed. Kento, the skeletal cavalry, stood majestically, radiating great power. He smiled dangerously and looked at his opponent, yet Kento showed not a trace of fear. A skeleton that can keep its shape while fighting interesting. Immediately the skeletal cavalry took a stance and began to attack. Hayes' face showed astonishment. Her quick reflexes immediately formed a shield. It's dangerous, 2 powerful magical forces are clashing. Yet Hayes seemed at a disadvantage. Soon the shield shattered. Fortunately, Alexandro timely used his shield to block. Then he fell and sat on the ground. This action made Kento glance over in admiration, while Alexandro was very surprised. Was that attack really that strong? The strike from the skeletal knight truly amazed him. Too strong. Not stopping there, the skeletal cavalry's eyes flashed. This time he swung even stronger than before, yet Kento remained calm. He stood blinking as he watched the skeletal cavalry approaching him. Unexpectedly, before the skeletal cavalry could act, Kento punched him away. He vanished unexpectedly. Kasan gaped in shock. Hayes and Alexandro were equally stunned. After finishing, Kento casually brushed his hands off. "And to think you underestimated me, that's all you've got." Then he turned to look at those around him. Suddenly, Kento's eyes froze as if he had just discovered something. Yes, then he called Kassan's name. Surprised by being called, he looked a bit dazed. Yes, there was a treasure chest shining brightly, and Kento wanted to know if he could open it. Kassan startled and shouted, "No way, it's protected by a high-level lock. With my skills, I can't open it." Hearing this, Kento pretended to be disappointed. "Is that so? What bad luck?" Kassan also looked dejected. "Yeah, it's a pity, but we have to give up." It seemed that way until Kento swung his arm and struck the chest himself. Kassan was terrified again, and finally the chest shattered. Alexandro and Hayes looked at him like he was some strange creature, but Kento didn't care much. "The reward looks huge. Kason, you clean it up." He immediately obeyed. Kassan stepped closer, still surprised in his mind. "It's the first time I've seen someone use brute force like this to open something, but it makes me wonder if he could break it. Why call me to unlock it?" After completing the task, they all went outside together. The sky was sunny and beautiful with birds singing. Something caught Kento's attention again. The cave the group just entered suddenly exploded. Kassan explained the situation. "After clearing the dungeon, it will disappear. So this time, there's probably no secret room." Hearing this, Kento became curious. Secret rooms really exist here, and Kassan confirmed, though dangerous, they really do exist. Receiving that info, Kento smirked excitedly. "Sounds pretty interesting." Seeing his attitude confused Kassan. The leader of the guards heard something and his face showed surprise. "What? All done already?" At this moment outside the city, the leader of the guards asked about the situation. "So, how was the dungeon?" Kento joked in response. "It was fun in there." The leader sighed in relief. "I see." Then he ordered everyone, "Follow me." Sitting in a room, Hay softly said, "There's no big problem." So the leader pointed out, "Then do you think that Manji can stay in the territory?" Hayes whispered in objection, "I think it should be fine." And the team leader clearly noticed one thing whenever she talked about that Manji, she was vague. He closed his eyes tensely. Conquering the dungeon isn't the issue, it's how you achieve the goal. It's really about identifying dangerous individuals. Kassan added, "He's not the type to cause trouble." However, the team leader knew clearly he was as strong as a beast but didn't harm anyone very different from a typical Manji. Now Kento praised each person. Kassan did very well as a thief. He disabled the traps and tried opening the yang. Alexandro is also an extremely strong frontline warrior. Her prayers helped us a lot. Hearing this, the team leader grew suspicious. Really, usually when strangers are forced into a team to conquer a dungeon, they don't praise others this warmly. In the end, he had to agree, "Good, you're allowed in." Before that, he reminded, "Even though you're allowed, if you cause trouble, you'll be expelled. Be careful." Kento confirmed, "Yes." Then he handed out a bag. "Here is the punishment reward. Everyone divide it among yourselves." According to the team leader, sometimes the guards would take the reward themselves. Kento didn't hesitate and cheerfully took it. "Thank you very much." The team leader guessed, "But this time, they probably won't touch it." Kento suggested, "Then let's split it evenly." They were stunned by this, Too quickly declined, no need. Even Alexandro dared not accept me neither. But Kento still urged, "The whole team worked together, so the reward must be shared evenly. You can't refuse." Hearing this, Kassan spoke up. "All right, maybe it's Kento trying to persuade us. Let's go celebrate now. Let's find a nearby tavern." The group did not expect this situation, What in the end, they reluctantly agreed to celebrate. Yes, but inside they were actually crying. They wanted to go home. While the others were gloomy, Kento was very excited. The team leader looked on in dismay. A Manji punched once and killed a skeletal knight as strong as a monster. He shifted to a probing gaze. At least someone as strong as a knight definitely wasn't an ordinary Manji. And the team leader could assure that a legendary Manji was an extraordinary being. Then he solemnly entrusted the mission, "I will report to the Lord. You all guard the gate." The subordinates immediately acknowledged understood. It was already night. At the vast palace, the lit torches created a solemn atmosphere. The emperor, sitting inside, spoke in a deep voice. "Enter." The team leader bowed and reported, "I report, my lord of Bakan region, Jin Kingdom." Bakan replied, "What is it?" The team leader immediately revealed the situation. The #1 security team reports a manji has entered the territory. That night in the waiting hall outside the manor, the voice rang out in the room. You allowed him in. The Northern Khan Guard team leader lowered his head. Yes, sir, but that's not a problem. From the golden throne looking down in doubt. Then what is the real problem? He nervously reported, he's too strong. So strong that it becomes an issue. He looked up and asked, how strong exactly? The room was silent except for the Northern Khan Guard team leader's voice and the surprise upon hearing he defeated a skeletal knight with a single blow. His eyes widened in astonishment. The skeletal knight's mind also appeared that monster Kento wielding a sword surrounded by dark energy. The skeletal knight was a type of monster that was hard to handle without being knight rank, and he defeated it with just one punch. Then he bowed his head, lost in thought about the large men standing in the blizzard. A manji who only knows brute strength, simple-minded with no education, then hesitated. So he must be first rank, right? The Northern Khan Guard team leader assessed. Probably, sir. He wondered, could he be even stronger? The Northern Khan Guard team leader's face was tense, unable to confirm for sure, sir. Hearing this, he remained silent and said no more. Such a warrior of that caliber, and yet is a manji, a race that believes strength is everything. This is going to be a big problem. Immediate decision, just summon him here so I can meet him. Below, the captain of the North Khan Guard team was sweating nervously. A bit. Worried. Are you sure you'll be okay? He assessed just letting such a powerful man run wild in the territory is already a danger. Meeting him directly and seeing how he is regarded would make me more at ease. The North Khan Guard captain objected, but it could be dangerous, sir. The knight beside him stepped forward with a serious expression. The North Khan Guard captain sitting on the golden chair reminded I already have a knight protecting me personally. Seeing this, the knight was startled and looked up. Then he turned to the knight. What do you think? He gripped the sword at his side tightly. Strong, yes, but just a savage. A big muscular guy with hardly any intelligence. Then he remembered his master's majestic affirmation. Compared to my swordsmanship taught directly by the sword saint, he's not on the same level. So you don't need to be afraid. The captain nodded discreetly in agreement. Finally, he announced loudly, summon that manji here, I want to talk face-to-face with him. Elsewhere, at a table full of food and beer, Kento bit into meat and chewed noisily. The three people at the table silently watched him eat like a starving man. Their faces turned pale, immersed in a cold silence. He raised his beer glass, his face full of goodwill, took a gulp, then set it down and smiled at the group. This dish is delicious, and I really like the quiet atmosphere here. Today it's on me, so feel free to eat and drink. Hearing that the group forced smiles at Kento, ah-ha-ha-ha-ha. Suddenly he turned around. You're the holy knight, right? Alexandro was startled. Yes. His face showed curiosity as he looked at him. What kind of holy power do you use? I didn't see you use it during the dungeon attack, did you? Hearing this, Alexandro awkwardly scratched his head and explained, I'm still training myself, so my holy power hasn't been activated yet. Kento's eyes widened in regret. Oh, that's unfortunate. Alexandro cleared his throat. Ahem. Then he turned again. Or maybe sitting quietly next to the lady serving the god named Colossia, right? Has there been any temple of that god nearby lately? She glanced away nervously and explained, no, I don't think so. He's not a widely worshipped god. She remembered that cold god's appearance wrapped around by a snake, the god of deceit and trickery. Colossia shunned and rejected by everyone. She tightly clenched the hem of her dress. Yes, Mr. Kento. He replied, why? She pressed. How strong are you exactly? Seeing this, both Alexandro and Kasan were startled and looked at him while he kept chewing confusedly, looking at them. Then Kento raised his hand to his chin, recalling the rank classification. I'm not really sure. I left the snow ice plain not long ago, so I'm still wondering how strong I am. How strong I am at defeating cavalry soldiers. Hearing this, Hayes widened his eyes and explained to him, from what I know at least rank 2 is needed to deal with him. And if it's rank 1, that person can defeat him like you did, Mr. Kento. He concluded, then I'm probably rank 2. Suddenly, a man appeared in front of them, sweating profusely. Sorry, shop owner. Bowing his body trembling, our shop is about to close. Seeing this, Kento just smiled while the man became even more frightened. That's my fault. Let's go. The group stepped out of the shop. Does anyone have any plans or schedules coming up? At his question, both Alexandro and Hayes shouted in unison, Yes, we do! Following that, Kassan also urgently shouted, "Yeah, I'm really busy too." He looked at them both shy and regretful. I understand that's a shame. Then I guess we say goodbye here. See you all another day. The three thought of the princess's farewell image and quietly rejoiced. No need to meet again. That night, Kento lay on the bed with his legs crossed, closed his eyes comfortably, and sighed. Phew, this feels really good. The first time I've been able to lie on a bed since coming to this world. Earlier at the boarding house counter, the owner looked at him with saliva dripping into the cup. Kento thought to himself, I'm glad to be able to stay at the boarding house thanks to the reward from the dungeon and not run into too much trouble. Now sunlight streamed through the window frame. He sat cross-legged on the bed, humming excitedly. Compared to Snow Ice Origin, this place really is paradise. He recalled when he was still at Snow Ice Origin, facing countless confusing system frames, and it took quite some time from when I woke up there until I discovered a civilization like this place. So what should I do next? I want to explore more, experience more in this world. Kento raised his palm and spread his fingers, murmuring, I want to have an inner journey adventure, self-deciding my destination to the elf tribe's holy land. His eyes grew dimmer, the magic tower and the magnificent capital of the kingdom. Then, he fell asleep. The next morning, sunlight shone into the room through the window, and he drifted awake groggily. Kento sat up and wiped the drool from the corner of his mouth. Hearing a call at the door, he stepped out to see who it was. Behind the door, the captain of the Northern Khan Guards looked at him hesitantly. Oh, did I wake you up? Sorry about that. He looked at him puzzled. Captain of the Guard. What's the matter? The Northern Khan Guard captain cleared his throat and then solemnly informed him, The Lord wants to see you in person. He muttered, Oh, the Lord. Then imagined the wealth and luxury of the Lord. The Lord is the ruler of this land, master of the entire territory. Someone like that wants to meet me. Kento's face was full of bewilderment. Clearly okay then. Kento looked at the Northern Khan Guard captain and asked, Can I go now? Let me change clothes and I'll follow you. Meanwhile, the captain stood frozen in place. Am I really taking him to the right place? Why was it so easy to invite him? Then, on the busy street market, seeing people trading, he thought, When I entered this territory, it was already pitch dark, so I only glanced briefly. Kento's eyes sparkled as he followed behind the Northern Khan Guard captain. Looking around, examining it during the day was truly amazing. He smiled admiringly and gave a thumbs up to him. If this is the kind of magical world, I'm always ready to embrace it with many surprises. The Northern Khan Guard captain's face went pale and confused. What's wrong with that guy? Then he furrowed his brow and shouted inwardly, Time is running out. I have to return as soon as possible. Right after there was an announcement. Lord, I have brought the manji here to meet you. Hearing that, he turned to give the order. Let him into the great hall. The doors quickly opened. He looked inside, the man's hand stretched out sincerely. Very pleased to meet you, Manji. Standing by the window, hands clasped behind his back, the other hand extended politely. I am Luke Bekan, lord of this land. Introducing again Luke Bakan, lord of Bakan territory, kingdom of Gehenthra. He shook his hand. It's an honor to meet you, the legitimate lord of Bakan land. Then bowed his head and closed his eyes. I am Kento, a man Dai. The man's eyes widened at Kento's polite handshake, his expression startled. Kento kept shaking his hand, one hand gripping the wrist, bowing respectfully. Luke wondered why would a demon shake hands. He only thought of Kento's coldness in his imagination, but was somewhat calmed. Manji had never really shaken hands with anyone before. To them, strength was everything, no exceptions. Yeah, it seems I've lived long enough to witness these scenes. He cleared his throat to regain composure. You seem to know some basic etiquette. Sit down here. Luke sat on the throne while Kento sat opposite at the tea table. The space inside was both silent and elegant. Kento glanced around for a moment. So this is what the Lord's castle looks like? His eyes lit up. Even in a magical world, it still looked exactly like the Middle Ages. In front of him was a knight by his side. He stood solemnly with arms behind his back. Is that a knight guarding the Lord? His eyes were full of curiosity and admiration. Hand placed on the table, clenched tightly, excited like a child. Staring intently, I used to be fascinated by playing knight role-playing games as a kid. Never thought I'd one day see a real knight in person. Looking at him so majestic, truly amazing. He is exactly as I dreamed. He also noticed his gaze. The knight beside him frowned with some surprise. Yes, a killing intent. He gritted his teeth angrily. That really is killing intent, no mistake. How dare he emit such strong killing intent, this aura right in front of the Lord? To him, he seems to be radiating deadly oppression. Then the knight beside him grabbed the sword at his side. Fool, you won't leave here alive. Suddenly he spoke. The reason I invited you here is simple. He paused, his expression full of scrutiny. I just want to verify a few things about you. He calmly crossed his arms, looking at him. It's up to you to decide. What do you want to verify about me? Then he questioned, where do you come from? Kento closed his eyes, recalling the snowy mountains covered all year round. Ah, so that's what you're interested in. I come from the coldest place on this continent, a land blanketed in white snow. Hearing this, both of them were shocked. Eternal Snow 9. He stared at him while he kept his arms crossed, eyes closed in thought. He really is the legendary Manji warrior, and now he's standing right in front of me. Then looking down. What you say is hard to believe. He crossed his arms and sighed. It's a harsh place. Believe it or not, that's your choice. His voice echoed in the room. Then let me ask another question. His eyes sharp as he probed him. How strong are you, imagining his crazy domination? The problem is, his strength is as terrifying as rumored. Isn't that so? Kento countered the question. Wrong, I don't know the standard of strength here. Still unclear, that was his reply. I see. Then he glanced at the knight beside him. The knight also nodded silently in agreement. Then he made a proposal. So do you want to spar with one of my knights? If you accept, I guarantee you'll receive a worthy reward. Kento knew it saw's face a duel. Then he added, Of course it won't be a fight to the death. I trust you will control your power. Hearing that, he smiled. I'm interested already. His excited laugh startled everyone, craving a duel with the Lord's knight. Inside, he thought of the knight in fairy tales. A knight not an ordinary one, but from a magical world. One who possesses magic and aura. A chance to witness his true combat talent. Kento put his hand on his chin, smiling with pleasure. I'm really looking forward to this. Hand gripping the armrest. He looked at him while he wore a fierce expression. He thought silently, Manji is still Manji. No matter how polite and elegant he is, his wild nature, thirst for battle, and passion for war remain unchanged. Kento's excitement startled the other two unintentionally. At the arena above, sitting on the observation chair, was the knight beside him. He and Kento stared at him. He smiled excitedly. The other reminded the two. Then let's begin. Hopefully no one bleeds here. The bell quickly rang out. The knight drew his sword carefully and looked at him. Consider this a privilege to witness my swordsmanship, Manji. Seeing that, he just smiled back. I'm really looking forward to this fight, too. He clenched his teeth angrily. How dare he be so relaxed fighting me? The knight's leg bent, ready to charge. I will show you the furious look in his eyes. Sword energy radiates around me. The skill gap between you and me is overwhelming. Kento calmly watches him charge forward. The knight beside him shouts, Now let's see what you can do when facing me, Manji. Before you, the sword's clone splits into 3 at incredible speed. His eyes widened. One sword thrust confused him. The sword split into 3, he shouted in his mind. What kind of illusion is this 3-sword head swung in front of him? Kento widened his eyes and dodged them smoothly without difficulty. This is definitely not an illusion. The swordsman on the other side continued to wildly slash his sword. He also dodged one. All 3 swords are real. Is this his sword technique? Then he observed and confirmed. That's right. The swordsman on the other side gritted his teeth proudly. You will have to struggle quite a bit. Just avoiding my sword strikes, huh? You've done well to get this far facing me. The sword strikes came more and more rapidly, but this battle didn't need to last any longer. Suddenly, Kento raised a hand, flicking lightly, causing the sword to shatter into many pieces. The swordsman next to him widened his eyes in confusion. What is going on? His hand was placed on the other's chest. The armor and sword shattered to pieces. He grabbed the armor firmly, causing it to deform, then threw him forcefully backward. He was thrown unconscious. Above, someone shouted in panic, What is that? The swordsman's hand dropped to the ground. He lay in a corner by the wall. On the ground was a long slide mark. Looking there with fear and astonishment, just one punch, only one punch, defeated a first-level swordsman. What kind of terrifying strength is this? On the other side, he also turned away, then smiled and asked the Lord, So the battle is over, right? The Lord above looked like a soul leaving. The body stood up, squinted his eyes at him. That's right. in his mind replaying when he threw the swordsman lightly and sinking into thought a manji who can defeat a first-level swordsman with just one punch that is the strength of a monster. At least he must have reached a superhuman level, but that was only the minimum strength he revealed. His deeper strength has yet to be revealed, hard to measure. His face darkened, sitting down. A manji with such power could shake this continent. Then he thought of this hero and his dragon. If so, I should inform that person, one of the few on this vast continent who holds the title of Holy Sword. Bowing his head, mumbling, it's time for him to show up. I wonder if he'll be excited to learn about such a barbarian. Suddenly a voice echoed, "Are you talking about me?" Startled, he looked up and saw Kan's silhouette behind the wide-open window, and the bree's arms crossed calmly. Seeing this, he sighed. He rolls his eyes. Your tastes are as strange as always. Kan's hand clenched playfully. Ha ha, everyone needs some fun and entertainment, right? Then he crossed his arms, serious expression, urging, so what won't you share that fascinating story with me? This is the Holy Sword, Kan. Standing up with support, he bowed to the elder. It's an honor to see you here, even if my report is sudden. Allow me to introduce the great Holy Sword, Lord Kan. The elder also smiled, his gaze sharp again, closing his eyes while bowing respectfully. The door opened, he stepped in and asked Han, startling him, Has your body recovered yet? Then he suddenly stood up in alarm. I will be fully well in a few days, please forgive me, my lord. Behind Kan also stepped forward. You should be the one apologizing to me. He put his hands behind his back. My foolish disciple lost to an unknown barbarian. He also looked shocked at Master, his eyes focused on the torn patch on the swordsman's chest armor, though there wasn't even a scratch on his body. His heart grew more expectant about Kento. Before coming here, I saw the boy's armor shattered. Looking at the armor's condition, it's no surprise if he had died, yet his clothes were only torn in a few places and his body had only one scratch. Could it be that Manji showed mercy? Kan folded his arms and assessed the situation. He's not an ordinary foolish barbarian. He's someone who can control his power and strikes very precisely. The engineer beside him stammered, I understand now. The old man's eyes were sharp, and he surpassed the engineer's skill to the point he could fight while holding back as if it were a joke. He must be at least at a superhuman level. Hearing this, both the old man and the engineer were astonished. He muttered, then looked at Kan suspiciously. Forgive my rudeness, but how does he compare to you? The old man Kan turned his head and confirmed, He is quite strong, but I am the sword saint. Even if he has superhuman strength, he still can't reach my level. Kan was a bit embarrassed, so that's how it is. Meanwhile, the old man was still deep in thought. But I didn't see him use any aura while fighting. Yet his power has already reached this level. He added, surprising Kan as well. That would be impossible under normal understanding. This is the power of a barbarian from the snow ice plains. What? Hearing this, he bowed his head, thinking of the scene where he was still in the snow ice plains. At first I couldn't believe it either, but it seems he really did come from the snow ice plains. Suddenly Kan looked up, a barbarian from the snow ice plains. The old man thought coldly of Kento living in the blizzard, the legend of a survivor from the snow ice plains. Is he human or... He cautiously stroked his beard, or is he a mutant? Images of fierce snakes and snow bears flashed in his mind, but then he denied it himself. No, that can't be. Kay made Kan beside him, confused, Then he thought of the fierce demons and white snakes. He concluded, if he really were a mutant, he wouldn't have been so lenient with you. The old man doubted Kento's appearance. I was wrong, but he still came from the snow ice plains. Why there and why now? Ken sank into doubt while the one beside him was puzzled. Is something wrong, old sword saint? He looked up. No, nothing. We'll talk about that later. His Majesty the Emperor was the same. Then he thought about when the soldiers entered the snowy mountains, always demanding the strangest things. Kan turned his head and said, no need to worry about that now. Kan was embarrassed. I understand. Then he pressed, is that Manji still in this land? Ken quickly replied, yes, he said he would stay here for a while, so definitely. Hearing that the old man turned and left his face serious and curious, I must verify his strength myself. The next morning, sunlight shone on a white castle, and the captain of the Northern Khan Guards asked him, what are you planning for the next step? Then he stared at Kento, waiting for him to hesitate. Surely before that a bag of gold was placed on the table. This is the reward for the recent battle. Then he interrupted, closed his eyes, and announced, from now on, I will no longer interfere with your actions in this territory. Now Kento stroked his chin thoughtfully. I don't have a clear plan yet, but it would be better if I could confirm my identity here. Having to conquer dungeons every time I enter a new territory is really troublesome. The Northern Khan guard captain looked at him and offered, if you're worried about that, there is a way. You can find someone of high status to vouch for you, confirm your identity. Or he interrupted, making Kento curious. Or what? He continued, you could become a mercenary. He closed his eyes and thought about a mercenary, explaining, if you accumulate enough achievements and are recognized by the mercenary guild, your identity will also be accepted. The Northern Khan guard captain had his own thoughts, though mercenaries only do odd jobs. If you haven't reached a certain rank, it's hard to get your identity confirmed. With the strength of that manji, finding someone to vouch for you will be the easiest option. Now Kento murmured, mercenary. His eyes lit up with curiosity. So there's such a way. In his mind, the cool image of fighting mercenaries filled his daydreams. Mercenaries are those who specialize in monster hunting and escorting caravans. This is the symbol of a romantic, mystical world. If so, Kento smiled excitedly. Where do I go to become a mercenary? The captain of the North Ka Guard looked up at him in surprise. There's a guild in the city. His face lit up with excitement, eyes sparkling. Take me there. His expression stiffened as he looked at him. All right. Explaining about mercenaries. Mercenaries are wanderers who roam around completing assigned tasks. Some see them as symbols of romantic freedom, but in reality, mercenaries are the lowest social class for those without recognized identities. They get attacked by monsters in the dungeons. Even strong mercenaries often die in unexplored dungeons or are just sacrificed for dark tasks. That's why low-level mercenaries are often crude, dirty, and noisy. The angry man in the green shirt punched the man in the brown shirt. You bastard, how dare you lay a hand on me? This is a mercenary guild. The brown-shirted man fell onto the table, then jumped up cursing, Want to start something? The man in green shouted back, Come on then, fight me! Others standing around shouted, Hey, right side guy, I bet on you do your best. I bet on the left guy. They lunged at each other, grabbing hair and throwing punches. Next to them, the pink-haired woman adjusted some documents and glanced over. Rosa, how are the new recruits this time? Rosa sighed heavily. They're terrible, all freaks. This is Rosa, the receptionist of the Mercenary Guild. She remembered Alexandro, a madman who called himself a holy knight. Then she thought of Kason and also a talented thief. Finally, Hay, the fourth priestess, who was not good at all. And the god she served was no trustworthy figure either. The pink-haired woman hesitated seeing Rosa like that. Oh, really? That's a shame. She bowed her head, troubled inside. No decent ones have appeared at all, and the uneducated mercenaries just bicker all day. Her mind drifted to the handsome blonde prince's arms open toward her. If only a prince on a white horse appeared to stand by me and help with this receptionist job. How wonderful that would be. Someone entered the door. Rosa looked up. She blinked in surprise when she saw him. Kento stepped in, smiling, looking around. So this is the Mercenary Guild. The two fighting men also turned to look in shock. No way, a manji. The others gawked at him too, and seeing their stares, he felt confused. Then he crossed his arms and sat before the desk, smiling. I'm here because I want to become a mercenary. Rosa, holding the papers, trembled nervously. You really want to become a mercenary? May I ask your purpose for this? He calmly asked. There are many reasons, but I heard being a mercenary can help get recognized identity in this kingdom. She explained awkwardly. That's true, but to get recognized through mercenary work, you'll have to achieve quite a few accomplishments. Is that okay? Kento confirmed. No problem. She took out the typewriter and announced, Then I'll register you as a mercenary with a fee of 5 silver coins. Can you tell me your name and age? He placed the money on the table. I'm Kato, and I'm not sure about my age. Her fingers typed skillfully. Then I'll write an approximate number. Finally, she handed him a card from a wooden box. Done, your mercenary registration is complete. This is your mercenary badge. It's the mark of a mercenary, don't lose it. He stared at it, then happily picked up the card. I've been accepted. Then he looked up at Rosa with a very innocent expression. Are there any missions right now? I want to start working on a mission immediately. She stammered, mission. Right. She pushed a sheet of paper toward Kento. These are the missions you can take on right now. Then he took the file on the table. Wait only these low-level missions. The content on the mission board read, forced labor missions, herb gathering, basement cleaning, sewer sanitation, street sweeping, night patrol. Rosa was sweating nervously, forcing a smile. Because you're currently a forced labor mercenary, these are the suitable missions for you. Inside, she was terrified. Manji is usually very proud. What if he suddenly gets angry? Should I call for backup? She squeezed her eyes shut and explained awkwardly, if you complete simple missions and accumulate achievements, you'll get harder missions later. He replied, I'll take this mission. She opened her eyes, regained composure, looked down at him, and pointed to the first mission on the board. She looked up hesitantly. Are you sure? He crossed his arms and asked again. This is something that needs to be done, right? She hesitated. That's right. I understand now. Next, Kento smiled and asked Han, so where do we need to gather the herbs? Rosa showed a photo. The top part was the shape of the plant. You have to go outside the village into the forest. They look like this. Okay, he said enthusiastically, took the photo and left. Got it. I'll be back soon. She was flustered. Yes. Kento turned his head, still staring intently at the photo. Behind him, Rosa was confused, wondering why he looked so calm. Then he stepped out the door and left. Behind him, Rosa's legs and arms went weak, and she was frozen in panic. In the darkness of some forest on the ground was the flower Kento needed. He looked at the photo, and then at the flower, nodding in appreciation. Herbs that heal wounds, huh? They look quite unusual. Then he took off his jacket and threw it on the ground. Kento put on a hat, smiled, and clenched his forearm. I'm already prepared with UV protection gear for the sun, and started his first mercenary task. UV rays cause harm even in other worlds knowledge few know, said Kento. About an hour later, the mercenary guild placed a sack of herbs on the table. Rosa was shocked. He looked at her innocently. Is this enough? She stammered. It's a lot way too much. Why would he want to ruin the entire herb field? Her eyes widened. But then looking at the herbs in the bag, their quality was very good. Most mercenaries just pulled out herbs carelessly, ruining their value. Kento shyly sniffed and said, Don't look at me like that. I'm pretty meticulous when picking them. She hesitated. Right. Then she handed him the coin. Thank you for working carefully, Kento. This is your reward for task 1. The coin was only enough to buy the cheapest meal, but it was the first money he earned from an honest job. Kento recalled when he seriously picked the herbs. He smiled quietly, feeling touched. Then he excitedly held the coin and stood up. I'm very satisfied with this. Can you assign the next task to me right away? Rosa was stunned. Huh? She widened her eyes, confused. How could he be satisfied with this reward, that guy Manji? Meanwhile, Kento looked happy and treasured the gold coin in his hand. It's still daylight, so I want to get as much done as possible. She was baffled inside, wondering why he was so cheerful. Tears streamed down her face as she shouted silently, Oh my God, this mercenary is as strange as anyone. Kento pointed up at the task list for the F-rank warehouse cleaning and said, Let's do this one this time. Rosa was confused, thinking after the herb picking this was already the 3rd time cleaning. Looking at Kento, still excitedly looking up, she felt suspicious inside. Could this fanatic actually like cleaning? Rosa, with a stiff tone, said, All right then, I'll assign you the task. Kento's footsteps appeared. Hearing them, a blue-eyed woman glanced at him. With a bear-like large body, he stepped in and said, I'm here to clean the warehouse. The brown-haired woman with a ponytail was shocked and froze. Kento asked kindly, Are you the owner of this warehouse? She was startled, but collected herself and replied, Yes. Thinking inwardly, What does he bring? Cleaning the warehouse is simple, just moving things around with no trouble. With his great strength, he easily carried a large stack of items which amazed the brown-haired woman. The next task was to sweep the roads. Holding a broom, he started sweeping. At first, it was a bit hard to control his strength, but he handled it well. While sweeping, Kento kicked up dust, filling the air with a smoky haze. Someone was watching him and saw he was just normal, making Kan shout, What? Why is he acting like that? Kan thought, Clearly, he should be at least a mid-tier mercenary. With enough determination, he could influence an entire kingdom. Just by showing his strength, he'd be respected everywhere. But Manji, who always solved everything with strength, is now sweeping and cleaning. Watching him sweep, he's not doing it half-heartedly, but very seriously. At this moment, Kento was happily sweeping dust into a dustpan. Ken, suspicious and confused about human nature, wondered what the heck Kento was doing, as he seemed to be enjoying the work. Gentle sunlight shone down, highlighting the lush green leaves and a pair of sparrows. Kento just woke up, stretching comfortably with a pleasant sound. He put his feet down on the wooden floor. Kento glanced at the nightstand and saw a money pouch, then exclaimed. He stared at the full cloth bag and recalled it was just placed on the tray and pushed toward him. Rosa said, "Sir, you've worked hard since your first day as a mercenary. Kento, this is your reward for completing a total of 15 tasks." His silver-white eyes and face showed excitement and happiness. Rosa reluctantly said it was 15 silver coins, but Kento wasn't disappointed at all and was still very excited. "Thanks, then. I'll come back tomorrow." Ending the flashback, Kento smiled unconsciously and said to himself, "Let's start day 2 in the civilized world." The cute brown-haired little girl clung to the woman's leg and cried non-stop, while the other adults all stared up in amazement. Kento calmly walked amid everyone's gaze, suddenly stopping. He was puzzled, looking at a large 2-story building with curiosity. A library. The door was pushed open, making a small brass bell ring. The librarian, with neatly tied hair, politely said, "Welcome." Halfway through, she screamed in shock at Kento's imposing presence while he politely asked, "May I read some books?" That embarrassing moment passed, and Kento successfully borrowed a book. He excitedly held up a book only as big as his hand and read it attentively. The librarian, with neatly tied hair, was silent and speechless at the scene. Outside, Kan hid, staring in disbelief, thinking, "Man Dai is reading a book." Although he couldn't see clearly by intuition, he was sure that the so-called foolish and savage Manji was reading. Could it be that Manji from this snowy land was completely different from the usual barbarians? Seeing the enthusiasm on Kento's face, he wondered if that guy was special after all. Kento closed the history book with his hand. He whispered, "Finally, the Empire has won." He recalled the blue-haired girl from the past. Thinking back a few years, Melena had come to the snowy region and said she would go to the kingdom at war with the Empire to sell weapons. Kento thought the outcome of that war seemed to be the Empire's victory. Kento calculated that the Empire currently seemed overwhelmingly strong. The Bakan kingdom had almost become a vassal. The Empire had swallowed half the human world and was still aggressively expanding. Kento thought silently, as if they were swallowing up the entire world. Kento mumbled, "Conquering the world, huh?" Then he threw that thought aside and became full of excitement again. Enough about humanity for now. Now what I really want to learn about... He looked at another book and said it was about the non-human races. Kento happily thought about a book recording non-human species. The fantasy races recorded in this book really existed in this world. The greatest cave in the world where rare minerals were scattered like trash. Mantomia. The dwarf mine of Pizzaravia. The village of the small fairy tribe Rakaperia. The flying city of the celestial tribe and the forbidden sanctuary that no one could touch. Elfo Sagrado. The sacred sanctuary of the elf tribe whose exact location no one knew. Many had tried every way to find it, but ultimately failed. Kento said, that means I hold the rare qualification to enter the elf tribe's sanctuary. Suddenly he was a bit surprised and exclaimed, Then Kento raised this book and said, "What, is there any place like Snow White Plain? The demon realm forbids humans from entering. It is full of twisted, insane, and abnormal creatures. There are many demon realms, but exactly 5 exist in this world. Giants and especially the Silent Forest. A place of silence and unending fear. An abyss that drags the world into the pit of evil. The deep sea where souls still breathe and live. A pit where nothing exists. And finally, Snow White Plain in the demon realm harbors terrifying creatures called heteromorphic species. However, the existence of the demon realm cannot spill over into the human world." After reading, Kento wondered how vast this world really was. Kento thought quietly, "Just Snow White Plain alone is immense, and yet there are so many more places like that." He stood up and said, "For now, the data here is probably just this much." His action startled the librarian. Kento said to her, "Thanks to this, I've verified enough." "Thank you." The librarian replied, trembling with fear. Yes, ma'am. Kento happily opened the door and left. He went to the mercenary guild again to ask Rosa if there were any missions today. She startled, then replied, Yes, Lord Kento has arrived. Rosa handed over the list and said, This is the mission board. Lord Kento's face lit up like a little squirrel. So we've met. Ken hiding to one side is unbelievable, truly strange. Finally, he seems determined. It looks like I have to meet him personally. After a long period of secret surveillance, the Holy Sword Can has finally made a move.